Chapter 631. 2 days ago, I asked everyone to restrain themselves, so now it's my turn to clean up this situation. After that, Xian Mo stood up and stretched his arms, as if he wanted to hold something in his arms. At the same time, the Wuxia League Supremes on the other side of the rostrum also stopped talking and looked at Xian Mo at the same time, each of them on guard. Obviously, the Dixian Supremes were impatient and were about to take action. No matter what their action was, it would not be beneficial to the Wuxia League. Therefore, when it was necessary to stop it, they would not hesitate to confront the Dixian Supremes head-on. However, when the situation was tense, Wang Wu stood up and said, "Hey, you're not going to be crazy enough to directly interfere with the performance, are you?" Xian Mo chuckled and said, "If you don't intend to abide by the rules, we don't need to wait for so long. Don't worry, we won't violate any rules." As she spoke, the power gathered in front of her chest became more and more powerful. It was above any cultivator in the Wuxia League, beyond the peak of the Unity stage, and could even be regarded as the top power in the Mahayana stage. The perfected lords present had no doubt that if this power were to be unleashed, no one would be able to withstand it alone. Therefore, he too, Feng Yin, and the other sect leaders of the major sects connected their magic power at the same time, ready to join forces to fight against the enemy. At the same time, the Dixian Supremes felt the tit-for-tat momentum and also responded one after another, either by taking out their immortal treasures or simply chanting incantations. Golden patterns appeared on their skin, and their fighting spirit burned like flames. A war had already stepped on the edge. As the initiator, Xian Mo smiled helplessly and said, "Don't be so hostile, everyone. Please take back your immortal treasures and immortal techniques. We really don't need to waste precious power on each other." Wang Wu said, "That's right. Then please explain, what are the essence chi balls you gathered in front of your chest for? Is it to liven up the atmosphere?" Xian Mo said, "There's no harm in saying that I'm here to stop this farce." "Oh. The rules clearly state that external forces are not allowed to interfere with the competition." Xian Mo smiled and said, "That is indeed the case, but on the other hand, the rules have never said that we are not allowed to interfere with the arena itself." As he spoke, the power in front of Xian Mo's chest finally finished accumulating, and a tremendous force that could shake an entire province exploded with a loud bang. At the same time, several Supremes subconsciously tried to use spells to stop it. However, the difference in level and quality caused these spells to be bounced off by an irresistible force. People could only watch helplessly as this huge force erupted and enveloped the entire arena in the blink of an eye. However, his power did not seep in. As promised, Xian Mo would not interfere with the battle with external forces. What did she do? The same question actually remained in the hearts of the Earth Immortals. Although they had been good friends who had fought side by side 16,000 years ago, as the top cultivators of the continent, each of them had more or less secrets. And they would tacitly not touch these sensitive areas. What Xian Mo did just now was obviously showing one of her trump cards, but what was the meaning of this trump card? In the silence, the red-robed patriarch suddenly said, "Wait, is it my illusion? Why do I feel that? Wang Lu's writing speed seems to have become faster." Upon hearing this, the several Supremes next to him fixed their eyes on Wang Lu. They saw Wang Lu bending over the table on the lawn, writing at a rapid speed. His wrist shook like a phantom, and one by one, the manuscript paper flew down from the table. It is indeed a little faster, but it's nothing strange. Maybe Wang Lu's sword intent has made a breakthrough again, so she can't help but write like a dragon and forget to control the time? After watching for a while, the red-robed patriarch said in horror, "Wang Lu is not the only one who is fast. Look at the fallen leaves in the surrounding forest. Yes, the falling leaves are also falling faster. Wait a minute, could it be?" At this moment, even Hichu Daoran was shocked. Time distortion? Rumor has it that when immortal technique was cultivated to the extreme, it could distort time. The immortal tea that Immortal Qin used to suppress the 6 Supremes was one of the outstanding examples. However, in the recorded history of 9 regions, there were only a few examples of miracles like the immortal tea. Moreover, all of them were born in the heyday of the immortal path, when it was extremely prosperous. After the age of chaos, the immortal path declined, and it was only in the past 1,000 years that the decline was reversed. With the cultivation base of modern people, it was almost impossible to reproduce the power of immortals. Even Hichu Daoran, who had the highest cultivation base, could only affect the passage of time to a small extent. Moreover, there was no hope of reversing the flow of time, only speeding it up or slowing it down. However, at this moment, right in front of them, a large-scale time distortion phenomenon was actually happening. Xian Mo accelerated the time in the entire arena, and it was getting faster and faster. In the eyes of He Tu and the others, Wang Lu was not only moving his pen as if it was flying, but his whole person had turned into a group of blurred phantoms. They saw that on the table, the draft paper flowed down like a waterfall, covering the lawn. And the red sun that was previously on the horizon was constantly climbing up at a speed that was discernible to the naked eye. At least 10 times faster. Soon, the red-robed patriarch calculated the acceleration multiplier of Xian Mo. The multiplier was not particularly exaggerated, but this was a time distortion phenomenon that spread throughout the entire arena and lasted for an unknown time. To exaggerate a bit, under the theory of immortal cultivation in 9 regions, this phenomenon was simply impossible to exist. Is this really not against the rules? The red-robed patriarch asked. She interfered with the entire arena, and her power did not penetrate the inside of the arena. Therefore, Wang Lu didn't even notice the abnormality. At most, it can only be regarded as an edge ball. Wang Wu said, but speaking of edge ball, isn't Wang Lu's action the same? Therefore, we don't have enough position to accuse each other of anything. It's just that everyone has their own means. Time acceleration, she's awesome. But, it's just 10 times faster. Wang Wu inwardly sneered, so what if it's 10 times faster? Yes, the super long novel that was regarded as a classic by Wang Lu was not infinite in length. So far, the length was about 20 million words, which was appalling. Wang Lu's copying speed was 100,000 words a day, which was far above that of an ordinary person. And after 10 times faster, it was 1 million words a day. A series of 20 million words could be copied in only 20 days. This might seem a bit long for Dixian, but in the Wanxian League, it was too short. 20 days was far from enough for those contestants to make a qualitative breakthrough. Wang Lu's own expected time was more than 1 year. How to make up for the huge gap between 20 days and 1 year? Very simple, it depended on creative ability. Because the novel was not finished, so far, the plot was completely open, and no one knew what would happen next. Therefore, when Wang Lu finished copying the existing part, he would start writing on his own. As for Wang Lu's creative ability, Wang Wu did not doubt it at all. A few years ago, when the master and disciple lived together happily on Nanfei's Peak, it was common for the master and disciple to cheat each other. And Wang Lu often wrote his master's ***** doujin novels as a means of revenge. And the plot design in those doujin novels was full of fantastic ideas, which made Wang Wu, the person involved, amazed. She couldn't stop reading it, and even lost her appetite. She had to see clearly what kind of **** she had encountered in the novel before she could feel at ease. And this was the most hateful thing about Wang Lu. Not only did he write **** doujinshi, but every time, he would never finish it. He would always come to the point where his passion surged and his sword would come to an abrupt stop. And when Wang Wu questioned him with the previous drafts, Wang Lu sneered, "Bitch, you want to have a climax? No way." Never finishing a novel was undoubtedly a bad habit in the eyes of ordinary people, but in the current situation, it was simply a rare divine skill. It was best if Wang Lu could maintain his creative energy for 100 years. He would write until the seas dried up and the rocks crumbled, or until the pretentious black-clothed Dixian couldn't hold it anymore and came out to stop. On the other side, after the time distortion, Xian Mo sat down wearily. Her body couldn't help but tremble, and beads of sweat began to flow from her forehead. Time distortion, for a first-class Dixian like her, was also an extremely heavy burden. Just now, she tried her best, and even her immortal spirit was almost unstable, but finally, she completed the immortal technique. Among the effects of this immortal technique, 90% of it was a trick. Distorting time had always been a supreme masterpiece of the immortal Tao. Although Xian Mo had studied this art quite a bit, she could not be considered a top-notch great master. In the past, immortal Qin could only use a pot of immortal tea, so how could she surpass immortal Qin? The key to this immortal technique was to borrow strength to fight strength, and it was very fragile in nature. There were 3 weaknesses. First, there couldn't be an existence that was too strong in the field. The stronger the existence, the stronger the influence on time and space, and the more difficult it was to interfere. If there was a supreme level cultivator in the field, it would be difficult for her to speed up by 20 to 30%. Second, the changes in the field couldn't be too intense. For example, moving mountains and filling seas, lightning and thunder would greatly affect the time distortion. However, Wang Lu chose the quietest and most peaceful performance. His violent sword energy was restrained in thousands of thin sheets of paper, and the impact on time distortion was minimized. Third, there was only one living being in the field, and the time distortion immortal technique was most afraid of too many people. With every additional person, the effect of the immortal technique would be halved, and it would be almost ineffective if there were more than 3 to 5 people. Fortunately, the Wanxian League didn't know much about immortal techniques, so they didn't see the flaws. Right now, the field was accelerated by 10 times, but as time passed, the effect of time distortion would continue to increase, until it was 20 times, 30 times, or even 100 times. According to Wang Lu's daily copying of 100,000 words, no matter how monumental it was, it would only take a few days to finish it. With this thought, Xian Mo restrained her immortal spirit, and her eyelids were already very heavy. Before going to sleep, she didn't forget to remind the people around her. "Help me keep an eye on him, don't let him play tricks after he finishes." Her companions laughed and said, "Don't worry, you've already done this much, how can we hold you back?" Thus, Xian Mo fell into a deep sleep with some peace of mind. When she opened her eyes again, it was already 20 days later. Xian Mo was surprised by the length of her immortal sleep this time, and the backlash from the time distortion was even more than she expected. She thought that after the black and white combination, her strength would rise to another level. It seemed that 16,000 years of sleep had caused her to degenerate a lot. On the other hand, 20 days had passed, and no one had woken her up. When did they become so patient? Then, she heard a conversation that she couldn't understand at all. Interesting. I didn't expect that after this ordeal, the main character's level didn't decrease, but increased instead. He's already reached level 5,000. I think he'll be able to join hands with his allies in the next battle and sweep the Saint Spirit realm. But the 3 Saint Spirits are all above level 6,000, so it won't be easy to win this battle. But the main character's equipment level is higher, and he has a large number of demon pets. The advantage in numbers can't be underestimated. Anyway, let's cast our recommendation votes and monthly votes first. I'll say in advance, starting from 0 is just a joke in this book, don't go too deep into the settings. Chapter 632. You guys, what are you talking about? Xian Mo couldn't sort out her thoughts even after 2 breaths of time. Even with her surging immortal spirit, she couldn't wash away the doubts in her mind. 20 days had passed, and the scene in front of her didn't seem to have changed much. In the novel, Wang Lu's figure turned into a phantom and kept writing. Hundreds of thousands of papers had been written, and they neatly covered the lawn like a snowfield in winter. On the rostrum, the immortals of the Wanxian League were still watching silently. On the other side, the Dixian immortals were watching the novel with rapt attention and discussing it with each other. Hearing Xian Mo's words, the Dixian immortals replied without turning their heads, "Of course, we're discussing the plot." Oh, the battle of the 3 holy spirits has finally begun. The main character's side is indeed powerful, crushing all the enemies. Ah, the great holy spirit has used his hidden ultimate skill. As expected, the strength of the antagonist is not to be underestimated. he won't just wait for death? Xian Mo asked. Are you guys reading the novel from zero? What else can it be? I've never seen such an exciting novel in my life. Hey, Xian Mo, you're awake. Xian Mo was so angry that she laughed. Huh, you just realized it? I asked you to help me keep an eye on Wang Lu and not let him play tricks. What are you doing now? After being yelled at by Xian Mo, the Dixian immortals finally came back to their senses and pretended to be enlightened. Then, one of them explained the whole story to Xian Mo with a bitter smile. That day, when Xian Mo fell asleep, the rest of the Dixian immortals began to keep an eye on Wang Lu to prevent him from playing tricks again. According to their expectation, Wang Lu would run out of writing in 1 or 2 days under the condition of 10 times or dozens of times the speed of writing. However, after 3 days, the story was still going on. When Wang Lu wrote, he looked intoxicated and couldn't stop. This guy can't be writing nonsense to fool us, right? Come to think of it, no matter what kind of long serial it was, there should be nothing left to write after 40 to 50 million words. What the hell was he writing now? Therefore, the Dixian began to seriously read his newly written words, trying to find the gaps and inconsistencies. As a result, when we come back to our senses, it will be the same as before. Xian Mo was completely convinced. You guys are all great Dixian immortals, and your immortal hearts are strong and pure, almost no less than that of the true immortals of the upper realm. Yet, you guys were captivated by a novel he casually wrote? The Dixian quickly explained, of course not, but when we watched it from the beginning to the end for the first time, we found that his plot was really coherent, and there were no gaps. There was no way to stop him midway. So, I could only continue watching until he ran out of ideas. Who knew that he would be able to maintain the storyline without collapsing at the rate of 10 million words a day? Xian Mo was also shocked. 10 million words a day, and it didn't collapse? How is that possible? Usually, a novel with hundreds of thousands of words is considered long. Hasn't he written hundreds of millions of words by now? What is he writing? If you want to talk about the storyline, it's simple. It's nothing more than leveling up and killing people. However, every once in a while, the novel will release some new expansion pack, which will suddenly increase the depth of the story. When there is no more expansion pack to release, he will design a server reload. In short, it's to let the characters return to their original state, and the plot will start all over again. Xian Mo heard this and quickly interrupted. Isn't this kind of rough handling of the plot worth stopping? This is clearly deliberately delaying the plot. Dixian smiled bitterly. But the server reload is to save one of the male protagonist's lovers. Although their levels are all reset, the person who was supposed to die has survived, and even their predestined fate has been changed. Plus, they have experienced the path of leveling up from zero. The price is completely acceptable. This is possible. Then how long will it take to write this? Dixian said, we are also guessing how long it will take to write from zero. Currently, people who are good at deduction have given the result that it will take at least 1 year. 1 year? This is under the situation where the speed is accelerated by 100 times. Doesn't that mean that if no one stops him, he can write for 100 years? The Earth Immortals nodded in admiration. Yes, this young man is really a peerless genius. Xian Mo couldn't help but sigh. This is ridiculous. With that, she stood up again and was ready to condense the immortal aura in front of her. However, as soon as she moved, she was stopped by her companion. Don't be impulsive. If you do it again, your immortal aura will collapse. But it's enough. At this point, no one can criticize you anymore. Next, wait for Black to show up. Black, of course. Xian Mo knew that as long as Black was willing to show up, any problem would no longer be a problem. However, it was precisely because she couldn't guess his mind that she was anxious. Black regarded himself as a sinner. Since his defeat in the rebellion against the fallen immortals, his attitude towards Dixian seemed to be indifferent. Sometimes, even when Dixian's career encountered great setbacks, he didn't come forward to help. Therefore, Xian Mo couldn't guarantee that if Wang Lu continued to delay endlessly, Black would come forward to stop him. That was why she spared no effort to make a move. So, now, did she really have to resign herself to fate? While Xian Mo was still tangled, several Dixian had been immersed in the magnificent world of starting from zero again. Hey, the three holy spirits have been defeated while we were talking. So, the protagonist can finally get the mirror of Nirvana to restart the world line and let the daughter of the earth be reborn, right? Ah, the plot that I've been looking forward to for 100 million words is finally going to start. Xian Mo's hair stood on end. Restarting the world line? Moreover, it's the protagonist who deliberately restarted it? What kind of plot has developed? Moreover, it took 100 million words just to restart the world line? This. Could 1 year really stop Wang Lu? Speaking of which, while sharpening his sword qi, he could also create 10 million words a day. According to Wang Lu's timeline, he had been standing still in the field and writing for several years. This tenacity was simply incredible. At the same time, several other Dixian felt deeply worried about this. Not everyone could be as heartless as the several Dixian in the front row, immersed in the plot of the novel. The more wonderful and long Wang Lu's novel was, the more worried they were. The grand competition had not yet officially begun, but the opening ceremony was already full of twists and turns, which made the situation completely out of control. What should they do next? On the rostrum, there was another unbearable silence. Time went by bit by bit. 1 day, 2 days. The Black never appeared. Some Dixians such as Bai, who looked on coldly from the sidelines, also showed no expression, as if they were watching a good show. Just when Xian Mo was beginning to despair about the current situation, things took a turn for the better. Because Wang Lu suddenly stopped in the field. His stop was so abrupt that many people present were caught off guard. What's wrong? Why did he stop? Yeah, he's about to do the double cultivation with the 47 revolutions of the mysterious daughter of the 9 heavens. Why did he stop? Xian Mo also widened his eyes, puzzled by the situation in the field. Because Wang Lu seemed to be in the right state. His sword intent had been nourished to be sharp and fierce, his sword qi was both hard and soft, and his immortal heart had also become meticulous under the training of the long-term distraction serial. It was the moment when he cultivated to his heart's content, and he had just finished rebooting the world line for the 47th time from zero. He was about to get married with his former nemesis, his current lover, the Empyrean fairy of the 9 heavens. The plot was reaching its climax, so why would he stop? From any point of view, there was no reason for him to stop, but he did. But, why? At this time, the number 1 king pill in 9 regions from the Wanxian League suddenly jumped up and said, "What the hell? Wang Lu, you be *tch, you're really addicted to being a eunuch. Every time you write a sex scene, you always do this. Now you finally eat your own medicine. When it's time to push the mysterious daughter of the 9 heavens, you subconsciously become a eunuch, ha ha ha. What kind of reason is that?" Xian Mo was puzzled, but he would not miss this opportunity. He immediately stood up and said, "Enough, since we've exhausted our talent, then let's stop this show." As soon as his voice fell, he heard his companions exclaim, "You can't do that." "Yes, Sister Xian Mo, the plot is at the critical point, you can't just stop like that, it's too suspenseful. I won't have any appetite. If I keep thinking about this plot, I will have obstacles in my heart in the future, and I will have no hope of becoming an immortal." Xian Mo angrily scolded, "Reading a novel and you're already filled with inner demons, you don't need to cultivate the immortal path. You can't put it like that. I didn't choose this path of the immortal Dao myself." Xian Mo had a headache. To put it nicely, this group of mischievous people had pure immortal hearts and were carefree, but to put it bluntly, they were just idiots. Although they were strong, they were really difficult to control. However, before Xian Mo had a headache, Wang Lu took the initiative to jump out after a moment of hesitation. With the departure of the main character, this month-long calligraphy performance naturally came to an end. When he walked to the rostrum, Wang Lu looked 70% unsatisfied, 20% self-deprecating, and 10% dejected. With Wang Lu's temperament, there were not many things that could make him feel dejected, so it was clear that it was not his intention to end the series from zero. The perfected immortals of the Wanxian League immediately asked, Wang Lu, was there an external force that interfered with your creation? Oh no, copying? Wang Lu sighed helplessly, then shrugged and said, it has nothing to do with outsiders, it's my own idiocy that made a mistake. I prepared everything in advance, but I didn't bring enough paper. What? You didn't bring enough paper? Wang Lu said, yeah, it's an idiotic reason, isn't it? I put millions of pieces of paper in my mustard seed bag, thinking that it would be enough or even more. Who would have thought that I was forced to stop because I didn't bring enough paper? Before he could finish, Dixian dashed over from the side with a big stack of paper in his hand. I have paper here. You can have as much as you want. Please make sure to continue writing the book. This enthusiasm shocked Wang Lu. You are. Dixian said enthusiastically, I'm your loyal reader. Huh. The Earth Immortal then took out 2 jade slips that were rich in spiritual energy. These are the edited versions that I personally compiled from scratch. Not only have they integrated all the chapters that you have updated, but they have also corrected the occasional typos. Oh, no, fake words. I made 2 copies. I'll give you one for your collection, and I'll have to trouble you to sign the other one, okay? Wang Lu nodded in silence and then signed his name on one of the jade slips, Zhang'er Iron Whip. Although I'm exhausted, there's still a second update. Please vote for me. Chapter 633. After Wang Lu signed his pen name, that Dixian immediately held the jade piece and showed it off to his companions. Ha ha ha, I have his signature. Then, he ran back like a wisp of smoke. Please, you must finish writing this unparalleled novel from scratch. I'm a bit, it's okay, we understand. You've been writing for so long, so you should take a break. But, we will always look forward to it. Wang Lu held the jade piece in his hand and watched him gradually go away. At the same time, he could vaguely feel that there was a fanatical belief gathering outside the rostrum. Wang Lu was the wisdom sect leader, so he was very clear that this force was the legendary power of faith. The problem was, where did he get this power of faith? His identity as the wisdom sect leader had gradually faded, and he didn't attach much importance to the power of faith. Then, could it be that this power that came from his reader group? He had been writing his book in the arena for many years, but in the end, not only did he delay the time, he also gathered a lot of fans. This was really a pleasant surprise, but the most important thing right now was not this. Wang Lu frowned. He had already noticed the strange atmosphere here. TSK, no wonder I felt something was wrong. Why are you still here? With your patience, you can't possibly wait for me to write my book for so many years, right? How long has it been here? Wang Wu said with a deeply painful expression of being suspected by a close relative. 1 month. TSK, only 1 month? That doesn't reflect this old man's endurance and tenacity at all. I feel like I've been here for 5 or 6 years. But, from another point of view, in just 1 month, I've achieved 5 or 6 years worth of cultivation results, which is actually a blessing in disguise. Hey, it sounds like you're quite confident in your own cultivation results. Could it be that after 5 or 6 years of cultivation, your dagger has grown a bit longer? Being ridiculed viciously, Wang Lu narrowed his eyes and prepared to launch a fierce counterattack. Speaking of which, it had been a while since the master and disciple quarreled. Did this B*TCH think that after being distorted by time for 5 or 6 years in the arena, his culinary skills had become rusty? However, before Wang Lu could open his mouth, Xian Mo interrupted him coldly. Are you done with your idle chatter? Are there any more programs after this? If it's gone, this farce can end, right? Wang Lu hurriedly said, Of course not. The program list has been handed over to you. There's still a group crosstalk left. Please be patient. Then hurry up. Wang Lu immediately gestured for the last group to appear on stage. Speaking of which, this group of people had worked hard. waiting outside for Wang Lu for a month. Because Wang Lu wasn't sure how long his calligraphy could be delayed. If he was lucky, he could delay it for a year and a half. If he was unlucky, the performance would be broken or stopped by the Dixian the moment it started. Therefore, the next group of people had to be on guard outside from the beginning. Although the actors' lounge was spacious, it was imaginable how difficult it was to live in seclusion for a month. When they went on stage, all of them looked miserable as if they had been constipated for many years. Fortunately, their attire was at least in accordance with Wang Lu's requirements. A plain monochrome gown and a stiff smile without any sincerity were the faces of the group crosstalk actors. When they walked from backstage to the stage, there was an uproar outside. Many people suspected that Lingjian School was going to perform the Blue River region's traditional folk art of driving corpses. If there was anything worth mentioning about these crosstalk actors, it would be the large number of people. 1, 2, 3, 4. The actors entered the stage in a long line. Just entering the stage took the time to finish a meal. In the end, there were 600 to 700 actors standing on the stage. As long as 1/10 of the people inside were whispering, the hall would become noisy, and the people outside could only hear the chaos, scratching their heads in confusion. Although the program list said it was a group crosstalk, who had ever heard of 600 to 700 people? Hey, Xiaolei, have you heard of group crosstalk? The Dixian named Xiaolei smiled bitterly and said, Sister Xian Mo, I have heard of it, but I was only interested in it when I was a mortal. If you ask me about it, I can't say anything. It's just that the group crosstalk I have heard of mostly only 3 to 5 people. This scale is really unheard of. Perhaps in the past 16,000 years, there has been a great innovation in the art form. After listening to this, Xian Mo came to a conclusion. What **t innovation in the art form? It must be that Wang Lu has a new plot. Thinking of this, Xian Mo was shocked again. Could it be that Wang Lu had already calculated my means, so he arranged such a program? Although 99% of these 600 to 700 people were mortals, and most of them were weak, there was no way her time distortion could be effective with such a large number of people. Therefore, no matter what tricks the other party played, it would be too late and there was nothing she could do. While she was in a dilemma, the program officially began. Hello everyone, today we will perform a crosstalk for everyone. Among the 600 to 700 people, an old man in the middle said with a trembling voice. His hair and beard were all silver, and he was as thin as a match. His thin body made his joints bulge, and it was unknown whether it was the strength of an artist or bone hyperplasia. However, it was obvious that this old man was quite prestigious among the performers. After a while, someone beside him stood up and said with a smile, the name of the crosstalk is called New Year's Greeting. Then another person stood up and said with the same smile, the so-called New Year's Greeting is a cultural tradition that has been passed down for a long time in our 9 regions. Then, one by one, the group of crosstalk performers quickly explained the ins and outs of the tradition of New Year's Greeting. Some of the audience who didn't know what was going on felt that they had vaguely learned something, but most of them were inexplicable. Xian Mo whispered to the one named Xiaolei, is group crosstalk like this? Xiaolei said, that's not right at all. The crosstalk I've heard is basically a few performers amusing each other, and sometimes they will sing a few paragraphs. This kind of long explanation. Maybe there is, but there is no need to deliberately divide it into sentences and say one sentence for one person. What is this? We just explained to everyone what New Year's greeting is. Why do we have to explain it like this? Xiaolei quickly patted Xian Mo on the shoulder and said, Sister Xian Mo, listen, they are going to explain. As a result, when Xian Mo turned her gaze, the person who spoke had changed. Because if you don't understand these things, it's easy to make a fool of yourself. Then a person next to her turned his head, not to the person who just spoke, but to the other side. What kind of joke? The person on the other side immediately said, for example, I know a person named Zhang San. He doesn't know what New Year's greeting is, so he made a fool of himself. Another person behind that person asked, what kind of joke did Zhang San make? A newcomer stood up and said, one day, Zhang San went out to visit his relatives. Next, more than 100 people finished Zhang San's story in the form of dialogue. The gist of it was nothing more than a misunderstanding caused by Zhang San's wrong words when he visited his relatives. Everyone laughed at him, and then an elder came forward to point out Zhang San's mistake. He taught Zhang San to earnestly study the excellent traditional culture and become a useful talent for the country and society. Zhang San was ashamed and excited, and said that he would definitely follow the elder's instructions and work hard. As the story was being told, Xian Mo felt uncomfortable all over. This kind of one-sentence conversation, as well as their stiff, fake smiles, it was as if there was an invisible will that played these 600 to 700 people like puppets in the palm of its hand. This feeling simply caused a chill to run down one's spine. Not to mention laughing, Xian Mo felt as if a gust of demonic wind from the depths of hell had blown by her side, and it blew to the point her soul core and body froze. She was silent for a long time and asked, "Xiaolei, what do you think about this performance? Is it because I can't catch the funny part?" Xiaolei said after some deliberation, "I have a feeling that this story is not a joke." "Then can you explain what is going on with those two people?" Xian Mo pointed to the side, only to see Wang Lu and Wang Wu rolling on the ground without any care for their image, and letting out creepy laughter. The two people kept laughing, even to the point of tears. As Xian Mo listened to the crosstalk story and the two people's heartfelt laughter, he could not help but wonder if it was a mistake for him not to be able to laugh. Xiaolei was tongue-tied. He wanted to say that the two people's brain circuits were different from ordinary people, and that it was not unusual for them to do anything, but listening to the exaggerated laughter, he could not say anything. "I don't really understand." Other than Xiaolei, Dixian did not understand anything else. What was so funny about the story just now? Could it be that the art form of later generations has evolved to a level that our aesthetics can no longer control? Could it be that there was a burden in the last lines that only later generations could understand? But then again, besides the two of them, Supreme He too, the red-robed patriarch, and the others were also sitting upright and still, without a hint of laughter on their faces. What exactly was the problem? While he was puzzled, the crosstalk actors had already begun to carry out a deeper analysis of the previous story, from why young people did not know the good traditions all the way to the attitude towards foreign cultures. The audience had already begun to feel nauseous from listening to it, and then they were relieved to find that according to the format of one sentence per person, the 600 or 700 people seemed to be almost finished. In fact, they actually had to finish. From the beginning of the program until now, the 600 or 700 people had said one sentence per person for at least an hour. The younger ones were fine, but some of the virtuous old artists were almost unable to stand, and needed the support of two people beside them at the same time to stand up straight. Xian Mo turned her head and glanced at Wang Lu. Unexpectedly, he did not delay the time on this program, but the next moment, she watched dumbfoundedly as the people on the stage began to leave in an orderly manner. From the other side, another group of people in plain long gowns walked in, smiling and waving to the audience. Damn, there are actually substitutes. The work of sorting out the spiritual sword brief is still in progress. The pressure of rushing the manuscript is a little big, but rest assured that the reward will be given as agreed. Chapter 634. 1, 2, 3, 4. Soon, 600 or 700 people came in, filling up the original actor's position, and the dialogue actually continued. The last person from the previous formation waved goodbye to the audience as he walked out of the arena. At the same time, he said his line, and the new person finally found a chance to speak. "Speaking of foreign culture, I know a person who particularly admires foreign culture, especially the culture from the Western continent. He admires it to the extreme." The actor who first spoke in the phalanx was also standing in the middle of the crowd. Obviously, his position was extraordinary, and his line was also longer than the average person. However, after that, he returned to the line and stood there with a stupid smile on his face. Following that, the 600 to 700 people told another joke about Li Si, who was overly respectful of foreign culture. It was also an absurd story, but it was told in a sinister manner. At the end of the story, there was also a large amount of preaching and propaganda. Similarly, there was not a single funny point in the entire story. However, there were two people on the rostrum who were rolling on the floor in laughter. Xian Mo couldn't bear it anymore. He got up and walked to Wang Lu's side. After hesitating for a moment, he squatted down and patted him on the shoulder. "Hey, what's so funny about that story?" At this time, Wang Lu was beating the floor. When he heard Xian Mo's question, he looked up and replied, "Ha ha ha, with you, that, ha, just now, ha, I can't, I have to finish laughing first." Xian Mo froze for a moment. "I know, you can continue laughing." When she returned to her seat, she felt like she was being played as a fool. Soon after, the second phalanx finished its story and left the stage. The third phalanx entered the stage in an orderly manner. It was the same size of 600 or 700 people, and they also brought a new long story. The only difference was, after the story was finished, Wang Lu and Wang Wu's laughter became a lot smaller. It seemed like for Taoist Master King Pill, laughing for more than 4 hours in a row was also a great burden. As Xian Mo thought of this, he glanced at Wang Lu and keenly noticed that Wang Lu seemed to have taken something out of his mustard seed bag and was about to put it into his mouth when he was rolling on the ground. As a Dixian, Xian Mo reacted very quickly. With a thought, he reached out his invisible hand and grabbed Wang Lu's hand, forcing him to show the thing in his hand. 2 plump and round elixirs. "What is this?" Xian Mo asked as he revealed the answer himself. Forget worries pill. A pill that can make people fall into extreme joy, forget all their troubles, and laugh non-stop. "So, this is what you are laughing at?" Being caught red-handed in bed, Wang Lu could not deny it and could only get up from the ground. At the same time, he kicked his master who was still laughing non-stop, indicating that she should stop laughing. Just have already taken the ha. "Okay, then you can laugh slowly," Wang Lu sighed and then said to Xian Mo, "Actually, this is all a misunderstanding." Xian Mo wanted to slap him in the face. "Do you really think you can fool us with this reason?" Wang Lu said seriously, "I am not fooling anyone, but I am trying my best to help some people who need help. Those actors who are sweating and performing crosstalk on the stage need our laughter and applause. So, even if I have to take drugs, I will give my laughter to them. Of course, it would be best if I could laugh without taking drugs, but unfortunately. So you also know that their crosstalk is not funny at all." Wang Lu said, "Well, as long as you are not an idiot, you will not find their crosstalk funny. But at least it is full of positive energy, a main theme, and very educational. Listen, they are talking about how to correctly treat foreign culture. Crosstalk is not for preaching, okay?" Wang Lu said, "This issue can be discussed later, but the problem now is that besides preaching, they don't know any other crosstalk. Then don't ask them to perform." Wang Lu shrugged and said, "Then they will starve to death. These actors are actually very pitiful. Except for this kind of unfunny crosstalk, they don't know any other kind of crosstalk. Before I found them to participate in the opening ceremony, most of them lived a hard life in their respective art circles. Fortunately, there are some monarchs who like art, so they can still be attached to some places to make a living. But in fact, there are also some crosstalk actors who don't even have the qualification to be attached and are really starving to death. And then, I think this opening ceremony is an opportunity to show their situation in front of people. Believe me, compared with those crosstalk actors who gain both fame and fortune, these talents are more representative of the overall situation of 9 regions. So what?" Wang Lu said, "This opening ceremony is our union of 10,000 immortals showing you all the various things in 9 regions today. Compared to blindly showing off, I prefer to let you see the real 9 regions. In fact, don't you think these actors are a bit like us?" "Oh." Wang Lu pointed to an actor who was trying his best to perform his lines on the stage. "Look at him. Although he only has one line, at least at the moment of his performance, that line is his everything. He will do his best." Xian Mo glanced at the stage coldly. His expression is stiff, and he also mispronounced a word of his line. Is that all he can do? Yes, although it's not worth mentioning in our eyes, that's all they have." While speaking, Wang Lu waved his hand, and the scene in the arena suddenly changed. In addition to hundreds of people's one line of crosstalk, there were many more scenes. Xian Mo's heart turned cold. According to the rules, no one was allowed to interfere with the scene during the show. Wang Lu just waved his hand and brought out a lot of scenes, not because he used some magical spell, but because he had already calculated the time. In other words, could it be that he even calculated the dialogue at this moment? However, soon she had no time to think about these things, because the scenes in the arena had been extended. It recorded the daily life of those crosstalk actors. It was a daily life that she could not bear to look at. In a simple thatched hut, a woman in ragged clothes said in a hoarse voice, "Old Zhang, second brother and sister-in-law came again yesterday." The man named Old Zhang frowned. "Are they here to ask for money again? I told them that I will definitely pay them back. As long as Zhang Yuanwei holds another crosstalk meeting, I will be able to earn money to pay them back." The woman just sighed. When will Zhang Yuanwei hold another crosstalk meeting? And even if he does, will he invite you? Didn't you say the last performance wasn't funny at all? Old Zhang angrily slammed the table. "I secretly learned the jokes from a famous master in the county, how can it not be funny? Moreover, it's educational through entertainment. Isn't Zhang Yuanwei's young master lawless and needs someone to persuade him to be kind?" The woman opened her mouth but did not speak. Old Zhang became even angrier. "I know what you want to say. It's useless to teach through entertainment, right? The jokes I learned aren't funny, right? Just you wait, I will come up with funny jokes in the next 2 days." Then, the scene changed. It was old Zhang stammering by a deserted river. Then, that young man quickly turned his head. It didn't matter when he turned his head, guess what? He saw his wife. After saying that, old Zhang was stunned for a moment. He looked at the gurgling river, scratched his disheveled hair, and repeated himself. It didn't matter when he turned his head, guess what? He saw his wife. After a moment of silence, old Zhang opened his mouth again and repeated that sentence. He saw his wife. At this point, even he himself could clearly feel how boring this line was. So what if he saw his wife? What's so funny about it? There should be, right? But if there really is, why doesn't anyone laugh? Why has no one ever laughed at my crosstalk? I just want to do a crosstalk, I just want to hear people laugh. Why can't I, ha ha ha. Suddenly, he suddenly raised his head and laughed. His laughter echoed in the wilderness, as if he was happy, but there was a sense of desolation in it. Halfway through his laughter, old Zhang was already sobbing. Why isn't it funny at all? Why? Then, the story ended there. The scene changed, and it was a close-up of an actor who was reading his lines. It was old Zhang, but compared to the story, he looked much more energetic now. He was wearing a brand new plain robe without patches, and his beard and hair had been carefully trimmed. He looked 10 years younger, and even the wrinkles on his face seemed to have been wiped away. Although he only had one line, at this moment, he poured all of his energy into it. It didn't matter when he turned his head, guess what? He saw his wife, ha 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 ha. The last sentence made the 600 to 700 people in the arena laugh in unison. On the rostrum, Xian Mo was already stunned. Outside the arena, the audience watching the show through the broadcast signboard was also shocked. What was going on with this shocking reversal? Why did those clumsy crosstalk actors suddenly light up the light of humanity? If the previous group crosstalk performance was just a disgusting farce, then looking at old Zhang's smiling face, people suddenly felt a sense of warmth and gratification. Some people even couldn't help but smile a little. Wang Lu said proudly, "See, the audience has already used their expressions to give this show the fairest evaluation. This kind of praise that is completely out of sympathy and pity is something to be proud of. This is simply fraud." Wang Lu said, "How could it be fraud? Old Zhang is really just a clumsy craftsman, and I just displayed his clumsiness in a perfect manner. This kind of artistic display that is painted up means that it's not real in itself. So you also know that this is a display. This is a big show, a program, not a news interview. Don't you find it ridiculous that you doubt that I shouldn't have used artistic methods of expression? Xian Mo was at a loss for words, especially when she saw that the few simple-minded Earth immortals around her had been deeply infected and began to laugh along with the laughter of the crosstalk actors on the stage. She really had nothing to say. Alright, you win this time. Chapter 635. Exclusive Ancestral Secret Recipe, Lose Sauced Meat, 1 Spirit Stone a Jar. A top-quality flying sword enchanted by a supreme immortal, reluctantly part with it, this opportunity will not come again. Cultivation Secret Manual personally passed down by a Taoist Master of Deity stage, 50,000 spirit stones non-negotiable price. In the wide square of B3 area, all kinds of people ran all kinds of businesses, ranging from spiritual treasures and secret manuals to daily necessities, cooking oil, and salt. Enthusiastic businessmen, passers-by, and spectators who stopped to watch. All kinds of people set off the hustle and bustle of the open space created by the Dixian people. It had been 3 months since the opening of the City of Immortals, and tens of millions of people had entered this dreamy city. Then, like seeds that had taken root and sprouted here, the branches and leaves flourished. B3 area was just a small microcosm of a big background. Of course, for many people, the world in B3 area was vast enough that it was worth spending all their efforts to manage and explore it. Little mouse, have you found the 3 golden vine leaves that I want? Someone will deliver them in the afternoon at the earliest. Okay, don't urge me, I can't give you the golden vine leaves even if you urge me to death. Moreover, it's only been half a day, where do you want me to find the golden vine leaves for you? Humph, don't forget that I have to boil your 8 desolation 6 directions soup for you. If you delay my business, don't ever think about immortal cultivation again in this life. I know, you don't have to repeat it day after day. You dead face, why didn't I find out that you're so long-winded when we were in the suburbs? Okay, I'm going out to sweep the goods, so you can look after the house with peace of mind. Also, shouldn't you find a chance to take a bath? The whole house is full of your stink. Get out of here. After scurrying out of the dark and damp semi-basement, the young man took a deep breath and felt that his lungs were once again filled with fresh air. He did a somersault in satisfaction and put on a cunning and quick-witted smile. The teenager was Xu Si, who came here on a whim 3 months ago. After being rescued by Wang Lu, he lived in the City of Immortals. The residents in A17 area provided daily necessities. The teenager, who used to be hungry in the suburbs, no longer had to worry about food and clothing. However, he soon discovered that compared to eating and sleeping in his room, the vast world outside was much more interesting. The City of Immortals was the fate of Dixian. Those high and mighty cultivators could be seen everywhere, and the density was even higher than in Fengdu City. Xu Si had always fantasized about being taken in as a disciple by a highly respected immortal, and from then on, embarking on the supreme path of immortality, living a carefree life. However, after wandering around the City of Immortals for several days, he realized that his idea was too simple. When he was in Fengdu City, he failed to meet his own immortal affinity, and now it was equally difficult in the City of Immortals. There were many highly respected immortals, but none of them were interested in him. The red and white cultivator he met on the first day was undoubtedly a good person, but soon he knew that the red and white cultivator was far from him. He was afraid that he would never see him again in this life. Moreover, although that person was famous, he was also controversial and had enemies everywhere. If he rashly said that he had something to do with him, he was afraid that he would be harmed instead. Xu Si wandered around the City of Immortals for a few days, but he didn't get much immortal affinity. Instead, he saw the approachability of the cultivators. Many cultivators were willing to condescend to talk to a mortal like him, and their lines were generally, "Smelly brat, get away from me. Mortal, don't block the way, be careful not to kill you. Don't you have eyes when you walk?" Hee hee, this old man's spirit staff just so happens to be lacking a few living souls. I wonder if you're interested in coming into play? Such words brimming with enthusiasm. Perhaps he really should have accepted his fate long ago. He was not the kind of lucky person with innate spirit root. In desperation, Xu Si had to be down to earth and find the person closest to the world of immortal cultivation, the dead face who helped him dispose of the stolen goods. Although the identity of the dead face was mysterious, he was undoubtedly a cultivator with spells. Xu Si found him, and after coaxing and pestering, he finally got the dead face to point out a way: artificial spirit root. If one wanted to cultivate without natural spirit root, artificial spirit root was the only way. Perhaps many high-rank sects didn't like it, but it was an indisputable fact that artificial spirit root was becoming more and more popular in 9 regions. It was just that, artificial spirit root, which was worthless to many cultivators, was too expensive and too rare for mortals. Fortunately, the dead face happened to have a bowl of 8 desolation 6 directions soup that he'd bought not long ago. It was a middle-rank man-made spirit root, and after taking it, one would have a middle-rank and low-rank spirit root. If one was talented, one would be able to reach shoot on stage in this lifetime, and if one had a fortuitous encounter, one might be able to break through the king pill. This decoction was not cheap, at least for Xu Si. It was a sky-high price that he would never be able to reach in his lifetime. However, he also happened to have a sky-high price prop in his hand, the person-seeking compass that Wang Lu gave him. Although the compass had an extraordinary meaning for him, the teenager who grew up alone in the alley knew how to be flexible. He mortgaged the compass to the dead face, and then promised to work for him and redeem the compass with his own salary. The dead face was silent for a long time, and finally, he agreed. At that time, Xu Si laughed in his heart. Sure enough, he was not mistaken. Although the dead face looked cold and indifferent, he was actually very kind-hearted. However, it was difficult for Xu Si, who was used to idling around since he was a child, to have perseverance in a job. In the first few days, he was still diligent, busy in the small shop of the dead face, but after a few days, he began to dawdle on his work. For example, right now, he was nominally going to the market in B3 area to sweep the goods, that is, to pick up some cheap goods. However, he soon ran to the sign in the center to watch the show. This was also one of the important entertainment activities for many residents of the City of Immortals in recent times. Today, it should be about the life and death farewell of that Jing Shiliu and his lover. Jing Shiliu's show is the most exciting in recent days. It would be a pity to miss it. While talking, Xu Si sat down under a tree in the square and looked up at the sky. If you don't believe me, I'll tell you a joke about the Western continent people paying a New Year's greeting, then you'll know what's going on. I really don't believe it. Tell me, what's going on? In the center of the square, a huge signboard hung down. Originally, the words, B3 area, were written on it, but now it was replaced by a water curtain projection spell. On the water screen, hundreds of actors in plain robes were performing a program called group comedy. This group of crosstalk performers had been performing day and night for 2 months straight. In these 2 months, the number of crosstalk actors who appeared on stage was more than 30,000, all of whom were unsuccessful artists that Wang Lu used the power of the Wanxian League to collect from all over 9 regions in the shortest time. Most of these people originally lived on the starvation line and were in poverty. But now, they were fortunate to participate in the opening ceremony of the grand competition, reaching the sky in a single bound. These people were divided into groups of 600 to 700 people, a total of 50 groups, and then took turns to go on stage. A complete rotation would take about 3 days. For these actors, the work intensity was not high, and it was not difficult to maintain. The crosstalk itself was boring. The educational but not funny crosstalk sounded like a kind of torture. However, outside of the crosstalk, the life stories that reflected the characters were particularly attractive. It stood to reason that this kind of unoriginal and insincere performance would soon be strongly resisted by the audience. However, Wang Lu had a pair of skillful hands that brought this group of crosstalk back to life and transformed it into a super popular show. Every time a group of actors appeared on stage, countless pictures would appear on the stage to show the bits and pieces of their lives, and one of them would be highlighted. In the first round, it was old Zhang who enjoyed the highlight treatment. Behind him was a young man who looked dull and taciturn. The story of this young man was different from that of old Zhang. He was not originally a crosstalk actor, but his younger brother was. Moreover, he was talented and could make people laugh when he opened his mouth. Unfortunately, heaven was jealous of talent. His younger brother died of an acute illness at the age of 20. His biggest regret at the time of his death was that he loved crosstalk so much, but the road of crosstalk was about to end. From then on, he would no longer be able to hear the laughter of the audience and see those sincere smiling faces. He still had many ideas about crosstalk. He created many jokes himself, but he could no longer show them to everyone. After that, the young man buried his younger brother, sold his family property, and began to study crosstalk hard. Although it was twice the effort with half the result, he persevered. He only hoped that one day he could tell these jokes to the world and then live in place of his younger brother. The young man who lived in the shadow of his younger brother received a lot of sympathy. Although he had a dull temperament and mediocre eloquence, he had a handsome appearance and melancholy eyes. And the sincere feelings between him and his younger brother, especially the many intimate scenes in their lives, such as the brothers rubbing each other's back when taking a bath, hugging each other to keep warm in the cold wind, made countless female audiences crazy, and the ratings of that episode of group crosstalk were also quite good. Such stories had emerged one after another in the past 2 months, and the form of expression was also rapidly evolving. At first, the program was just a simple clip of a person's life. Later, it was found that some complex stories were difficult to explain clearly in just 1 hour, so the serialized form was born. If a story was not finished in this round, it would wait for the same group to rotate 3 days later, and then continue to be played. This provided a richer space for the performance of the story, and thus there were more twists and turns of the story. Gradually, group crosstalk began to become popular in the City of Immortals. No matter which area, the most important way of entertainment for people was to look up and watch the stories of the crosstalk actors. Today's group happened to be the turn to play the story of Jing Shirlu, which was also the most popular story in recent times. I wish everyone a happy Christmas Eve. I look forward to everyone's full moon party in November next year. Chapter 636. Jing Shirlu was a handsome man of 24 or 25 years old. Even the most demanding person would admit that Jing Shirlu was at least a man who was quite good-looking. Among the group of ugly crosstalk actors, his appearance was like a crane in a flock of chickens. However, among the 30,000 actors, there were many handsome people, and there were more than one who was better than Jing Shirlu. And Jing Shirlu was undoubtedly the most popular star in the City of Immortals in the past month. His story had been serialized for 13 times. The ratings continued to rise, and his popularity continued to rise. In B3 area, there were even peripherals related to his theme that began to be sold. And the basis of this popularity was the touching love story of Jing Shirlu and his lover. The main line of the story was roughly like this: Jing Shirlu was a poor man from the bottom of society. By chance, he got a ticket to a luxury ship that could cross the ocean. On that ship, he was lucky enough to meet a Luo, a young lady who dared to love and hate, and thus began an unusual love road. In the previous 13 episodes, the audience had been fascinated to appreciate how the two young people were not afraid of power and etiquette in their vigorous love, but they were also on tenterhooks when they saw the luxury ship accidentally hit a strange sea beast, and the hull collapsed and gradually sank, causing the two young people to encounter a dangerous situation. Finally, the show seemed to be coming to an end, and Jing Shirlu and a Luo also faced the test of life and death. At this point, no one knew how many people in the City of Immortals were concerned about this couple. People could not suppress their curiosity at all. What happened to Jing Shirlu and a Luo in the end? Although rationally, Jing Shirlu, of course, survived, otherwise, how could he perform on stage? However, in the previous dozens of performances, Jing Shirlu always had a stiff dead face, and there was no emotion when he recited his lines, which made many people begin to doubt whether he was really alive. Moreover, even if he was still alive, what about a Luo who possessed 100 charms with every frown and smile? Did she die in that disaster, which caused Jing Shirlu's heart to die? And all of this would be revealed in this episode. Therefore, even though Shu Si knew that being lazy and absent at this time was likely to affect his 8 Desolation 6 Directions soup, he still could not help but run over. In any case, the 8 Desolation 6 Directions soup is definitely not only in the hands of Dead Face. But if you missed this episode, I'm afraid there won't be a repeat in the future. Thinking of this, Shu Si felt even more justified. He directly lay down under the tree, and his posture seemed very comfortable. After a while, Jing Shirlio's group of actors arrived late. And more than 90% of the space on the signboard was occupied by the story of Jing Shirlu. Continuing from the previous episode, the screen showed a bright moon and stars, as well as the ice-cold sea. The hull of the giant ship had almost been entirely sunk. Most of the passengers on board had been buried at the bottom of the ocean, too. The giant ship had crashed into a deep-sea beast that was hibernating. Resuscitation: the beast had killed all the immortal cultivators on board the moment it was launched. Only the civilians, because they were not important to the beast at all, were lucky enough to survive. But as the ship sank, the lives of these civilians gradually came to an end. As for the protagonists of the story, Jing Shirlu and Aluo, at this time, were quietly waiting for the arrival of fate on the sea. Before the giant ship sank, Jing Shirlu found a wooden plank, but the area was limited and could only accommodate one person. Now Aluo was lying on the wooden plank with tears streaming down her face. Jing Shirlu sank his body into the cold seawater and said his last words to Aluo. Because of the cold, Jing Shirlio's voice trembled. However, he still kept talking. Talking about the past, talking about the present, talking about the future, and even talking about crosstalk. Aluo, I hope that the last thing I see in my life is your smile, so that when I fall asleep at the bottom of the sea, I can dream of you smiling. I don't want you to sleep, I just want you to live. No, the one who should live is you. Promise me, for me, live healthy and happy forever. Outside the stage, many spectators began to cry because of Jing Shirlio's words. Even Shu Si, who had always been scolded for being heartless, could not help but wipe his eyes. Motherf asterisk cur, how could there be sand in this city of immortals? However, just as he wiped his tears, he suddenly saw a flash of strong light on the signboard, which covered everything. The deep night sky, the cold sea, all gradually turned into nothingness under the strong light. Shu Si was dumbfounded. He stood up and asked, Is this a new change? Could it be that at the last moment, an immortal came down to earth and saved everyone? So Jing Shirlu, who should have died, can do crosstalk here. However, the next moment, a cold voice sounded, breaking everyone's conjecture. That's the end of the boring show. The strong light gradually dissipated, and on the stage, the hundreds of crosstalk performers disappeared into thin air, leaving only a figure in black, facing countless pairs of eyes. There was a long silence. The extreme shock made many people not know how to react for the first time. But soon, the overwhelming scolding in the city of immortals filled the sky. F***CKU, who the F***CK do you think you are? This is the critical moment. Kill this son of a bitch. In the face of the surging curses, the man in black seemed to turn a deaf ear to them. He just coldly raised his eyes. His gaze seemed to penetrate the signboard and went straight to the heart of everyone. Then, a cold wind rose and froze the anger. A moment later, the man in black said, "The show just now is a scam. This is the real Jing Shirlu." With that, he stretched out his hand and also summoned a picture in the arena. On one of them, the face of Jing Shirlu was reflected. However, compared with the previous Jing Shirlu, this Jing Shirlu seemed a bit timid and hazy. Although he was born in a poor family, he was open and aboveboard, and had a cheerful temperament. Next, the picture reflected the face of a girl, which was 70 to 80% similar to Aluo, but not as bright as Aluo. Her eyes were a bit slender, her skin was a bit darker, and her figure was a bit more plump. It was just that, her eyes were full of hostility. The man in black explained, "This is the real Aluo." The two of them did not meet on a huge ship. Instead, Aluo's husband raised some down-and-out entertainers at home, and Jingshi was one of them. At the same time, Luo is not a cheerful girl who dares to love and hate. She is just a wanton widow who can't control herself and can't wait to pull all the good-looking men in the world to bed. On the picture, Luo said to Jingshi with a smile. "Little Zheng, my shoulders are very sore, come in and give me a massage." Jingshi looked up at her in fear. "Miss, I'm just a crosstalk performer, please don't embarrass me." "So what if you're a crosstalk performer? Are you not a man just because you're a crosstalk performer?" "Miss, you must be joking." "Of course, I'm a man, but," Luo raised her eyebrows, "if I tell you to come in, then come in. Be careful, or I'll ask my father to kick you out." Jingshi was finally defeated by the tyrannical power, and shrunk back into the room. Then, there was a burst of moaning sounds that made adults feel extremely uncomfortable. After a while, the picture changed. Jingshi had changed from a handsome man to a haggard figure. Especially when he walked, his legs were clamped together, and his posture was even more miserable. Obviously, the hard work of serving Miss Luo was far from what a crosstalk performer could bear. But Luo still did not know when to stop. "Little Zheng, where did you go? Hurry up and come here, I want it again today. If you dare not come, I will let people break the legs of your parents, and then catch your little lover called I made to feed to the dogs, do you hear me?" Jingshi expression was originally bitter, but when he heard the last words, his whole body was shocked, and his eyes gradually turned cold, revealing a trace of madness. Then, perhaps it was God's will or luck, he accidentally touched a shovel outside the flower bed. His slender and thin hand, which only knew how to hold a pen, now held the shovel tightly. The picture changed again, and it was already a rainy night with lightning and thunder. In the rainstorm, the skinny Jingshi waved the shovel and dug a deep pit in the ground. At his feet, there was a once warm and plump body, but now it was cold and stiff. Jingshi eyes were cold, and his eyes were completely focused on the deep pit in front of him. The rainstorm was like a waterfall, and soon there was water in the pit, and the water surface reflected Jingshi broken face. "Father, mother, your son is unfilial, I can't take care of you in your old age. The grace of raising me can only be repaid in the next life. I'm afraid I can't save enough money to go back and marry you. You, just forget me, find a good man to marry, and then live healthy and happy forever, just for me." The picture ended here, and the man in black sighed. The real Jingshi is just a poor man who was forced into a dead end. It's not worth it for you to wantonly distort his story and then use it for entertainment. He has never seen the sea in his life, let alone travel by boat. Luo is his enemy who he hates to the bone, so how could he make a pledge of eternal love with her? Such a story would only make people sick. With that, the man in black waved his hand, and all the signboards in the City of Immortals dimmed, and the program broadcast was forcibly stopped. On the other side, on the rostrum, Wang Lu shrugged indifferently. "Why ruin everyone's good dream? You'll make a lot of people who believe in love lose sleep." The man in black ignored Wang Lu and just coldly said, "Let's start the next round." The so-called next ring was the last and most important ring of the opening ceremony. The union of 10,000 immortals and the ancient earth immortals would show the wager of the grand competition under the supervision of everyone. The grand competition was said to determine the future of 9 regions, but how to determine the specific method would depend on the bet provided by the two sides. There could be no delay in this round. In other words, Wang Lu's delaying tactic ended here. The main show was finally about to begin. "Thank you, Great Alliance leader, for sending warmth to me on Christmas Eve, I hereby add. By the way, I wish everyone a good harvest on Christmas Eve and a happy full moon party in November next year." Chapter 637. A calligraphy copy, a group crosstalk. Wang Lu succeeded in delaying 3 months with despicable and shameless tactics. It was not long, but it was more than half shorter than the most optimistic one-year expectation. However, from another point of view, when the grand competition was first set, the preparation time was actually only 3 months. Now, it was equivalent to doubling the preparation time, which was enough to be proud of. However, Wang Lu, who created this miracle, couldn't hold it anymore. His eyelids twitched in front of the rostrum. In these 3 months, he worked the hardest in the entire city of immortals. In the first month, he wrote without rest in the arena. Counting the time distortion factor, he didn't sleep for 7 or 8 years. Even though the endurance and energy of Daoist Master King Pill were extraordinary, even though Wang Lu had entered the ethereal state when writing, and the consumption was relatively low, 7 or 8 years without rest was still enough to make a Yuanying stage cultivator suffer from a mental breakdown. Moreover, he was not idle in the next 2 months. The script of the group crosstalk was, of course, written by him. Apart from him, few people could create so many rich scripts in such a short period of time. Moreover, he would adjust and modify them in time according to the audience's reaction. It was just that, the price of this job was further consumption of energy. In these 2 months, the group crosstalk was rotating around the clock, and he, the script director, naturally couldn't rest. Even if the man in black didn't come forward to stop him, it was actually difficult for Wang Lu to persist all night. When Zheng Shiliu's story came to an abrupt end, Wang Lu felt relieved. That's all I can do. Next, it's all up to you guys. Wang Lu said and glanced at the people around him. In any case, we're all grandmasters of a sect. Please work harder next. Don't lose to me, a little gold core. Upon hearing this, many supremes on the side of the rostrum felt deeply ashamed. In terms of strength and experience, each of them was far above Wang Lu. However, on the stage of the grand competition, their role was minimal. They had to rely on Wang Lu, the insignificant King Pill, to control the situation. Of course, it was true that Supreme Hichu was indulging Wang Lu, but on the other hand, these Supreme asked themselves if they were in Wang Lu's shoes, they really couldn't do what he did. For example, the opening ceremony of the grand competition, which everyone didn't take seriously at first, he was actually able to dig out 3 months' time from it. With both genius creativity and outstanding execution, Wang Lu's chief planner was truly admirable. Everyone, I'll cut to the chase. In this grand competition, I have to win no matter what. I never want to taste the taste of failure. This time, I can't afford to lose. Don't let me down. If I wake up and find that you have lost, I will consider jumping ship. After saying this, Wang Lu could no longer support himself and fell asleep, leaving the group of Supremes with indescribable embarrassment. This kind of naked condescending and distrustful tone was really rare for these big shots with incomparably prominent status. And the most important thing was the last sentence. Jump ship? Jump to where? On Dixian's side? In theory, this was, of course, a joke. However, Wang Lu was a person who could not be judged by common sense. He had already done too many things that were taken as a joke. For example, the 3-month opening ceremony. Who would not think that it was a joke beforehand? If the union of 10,000 immortals really lost to the ancient Earth immortals in the grand competition, would he really jump ship to the Earth immortal camp? He might really be able to do this kind of thing. On a larger scale, the grand competition was for dominance, but in the final analysis, it was still to fight against the crisis of the fallen immortal. If the Wanxian League was really rotten, then it was understandable that a good bird would choose a tree to nest in. On a smaller scale, on the Dixian side, Xian Mo obviously had an unusual relationship with him, and during this time, he had unearthed a large group of brainless fans. In addition, he was the excavator, the opener, and even the successor of this group of immortal tombs, so there was not much resistance to him joining the Dixian camp. The more they thought about it, the more complicated the Supreme's eyes became when they looked at Wang Lu. Why did such a talented disciple speak irresponsibly and say such a thing? Among them, Feng Yin Daoist master was the most embarrassed. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. His eloquence had always been mediocre, and he was not eloquent. Moreover, he also felt that the problem of Wang Lu was quite tricky. After all, Wang Lu's predecessor was that person. What would Feng Yin say about him? When he was tangled, Feng Yin turned his head and saw that not far away, Wang Wu was sitting on a futon with a plate of melon seeds in her hand, watching with interest. She looked like she was watching a good show, which immediately made him angry. In his primordial spirit, Feng Yin roared, "Wang Wu!" Wang Wu's whole body quivered and she spilled half of the melon seeds. "What's wrong with me? Look at the good disciple you've taught. What the hell, what does this have to do with me? Don't just sit on it." Wang Wu retorted angrily. However, as soon as she finished her sentence, Feng Yin blocked all her words. "Do you still want the elder's position or not? Damn you, you abusing your power, bitch. You're ruthless. Just you wait." In her primordial spirit, Wang Wu spat on Feng Yin's behavior of bullying the weak and fearing the strong. Then, she glanced at Wang Lu, who had fallen asleep, and her heart was filled with hatred. "You bitch, you actually pushed everything to me and slept alone." But, things still had to be done. After all, he was Wang Lu. Therefore, Wang Wu put on a smile and stood up. "Big shots, please don't take it seriously. Wang Lu's words carry no harm." A true monarch snorted. "The great King Pill Enlightened Master is also considered a child?" Wang Wu curled her lips. "He's a virgin, how can he not be counted?" Pooh. At that moment, a true monarch almost vomited blood. "Wang Lu is a virgin?" Wang Wu said, "Well, if you want to be serious, I can't be 100% sure. Anyway, I haven't used it." "Nonsense. You're master and disciple, how can you cross the line?" Wang Wu raised her eyebrows. "What's wrong with master and disciple?" In many sects, grandfather-grandson relationships, and even multiple grandfather-grandson relationships are very popular. Master and disciple relationships are simply plain soup and white noodles. Really, what era are you still so inflexible? You're a true elder of a supreme sect, how can you say such disgraceful words? With her hands on her hips, Wang Wu laughed with great momentum. "Ha ha ha. We cultivators cultivate the immortal Tao to begin with. What's the big deal about saying disgraceful words? If you don't even dare to speak, how can you become an immortal? You're being unreasonable." Wang Wu stuck out her chest again. "I'm a woman. It's only right for me to be unreasonable. If you're not convinced, why don't you castrate yourself and stand on the same level as me? But I'll still defeat you with my rich experience." "You." Seeing that Wang Wu was getting more and more excited, the true monarch who was quarreling with her turned livid and had to use his immortal heart to suppress his anger. On the other side, Feng Yin Daoist master really knelt down. "Fifth junior sister, do a good deed and stop your supernatural power. If you continue, our Lingjian school's reputation will be completely gone." "Damn, didn't you tell me to say it in the beginning? You're so fickle, you're more like a woman than I am." Seeing that the quarrel was about to get out of hand, true monarch He too sighed. "Okay, stop arguing. Why do you have to do this for an unimportant question?" He too's words were still effective. Although the true monarchs were angry, they restrained themselves and stopped talking. They just glared at Wang Wu fiercely and decided to teach her a lesson in the future. As for Wang Lu, he really needed to be careful in the future. It was true that he was talented, but the more talented a person was, the more ideas he had, and the more difficult it was to control him. Once something went wrong, it would be a big problem that would hurt the union of 10,000 immortals. We don't have too many opportunities to waste on questioning each other. If you suspect someone, don't use him. Since we've chosen Wang Lu, let him do it. If we're on guard against him, what's the use of him? After he too finished speaking, he looked at his side. Led by Xian Mo, dozens of Dixian people had already walked into the field from the rostrum. He said, "It seems that Dixian friends can't wait any longer. Everyone, follow me to complete the last part." The last part of the opening ceremony was the joint blood oath between the Wanxian League and Dixian to ensure the effectiveness of this competition. Since it was said that the grand competition would be used to determine the dominance of the future war against the fallen immortals, there must be a restrictive measure. For example, if they lost in the competition, on the surface, they bowed to the opponent, but in secret, they only cared about their own interests, which would eventually lead to mutual distrust and even mutual hostility between the two sides. What was the point of this grand competition? It was absolutely necessary to sign a binding contract on both sides. And the signing of this contract was arranged at the last part of the opening ceremony, which was in the central arena of Immortal One area. The two sides who entered the arena to sign the contract were all 121 Dixian people who were resuscitated from the Tomb of Immortals and 147 high-level elders who represented the will of the entire Wanxian League. 100 of them came from the Heavenly Sage Hall of the Wanxian League, which was also the highest authority of the Wanxian League. The other 47 were the so-called Evil Path. These 200 people entered the arena at the same time. The pressure generated by their existence alone made the arena overwhelmed and shook violently. The grassland, which had previously carried the whole performance of the opening ceremony, cracked in an instant. Thousands of bottomless cracks crisscrossed and bloomed on the ground, like a gorgeous flower of death. The blue sky was mercilessly torn, the stars fell, and the sky collapsed, revealing a dark void. However, soon, the space in the arena began to expand rapidly until it reached its limit, barely digesting the pressure of these more than 200 peak cultivators. However, at this time, there was no tangible thing in the arena. More than 200 people stood in the dark void, each emitting a faint glimmer of light. After the two sides silently confronted each other for a moment, Hichu Daoran took a step forward from the crowd of the Wanxian League. On the other side, the man in black who claimed to be the sinner also quietly appeared and came to the front of He Tuesday. The two of them each represented a side. When their eyes met, they both felt a vast and majestic power that was close to the power of the heavens. The man in black was slightly startled, and then nodded and praised, "You are indeed worthy to be the leader of the 9 regions cultivators." He too said, "There are many capable people in 9 regions. If you call me the leader of the cultivators, I'm afraid it's an exaggeration." With that, he took out a quaint scroll from his bosom and placed it in the void in front of his chest. Then, he pushed the scroll horizontally with an invisible force, which turned out to be a picture. It was a picture depicting the mountains and rivers of the 9 regions. The scroll was only 2 feet wide and 3 feet long. The vast 9 regions were just a few strokes on the painting. However, if one looked closely, one could see the ups and downs of the mountains, the surging rivers, and even the flow of the surrounding spiritual energy from the subtle points of the painting. The picture seemed to be a few feet square, but it contained endless content. It was a picture that seemed to carry the entire 9 regions. Taoist Master He too said in a deep voice, "This thing is the 9 regions map. The map records everything that the Wanxian League knows about 9 regions. And on our side, all 147 people have entrusted part of their primordial spirit to it." On the other side, the man in black nodded and then raised his hand high. In the dark void, hundreds of starlights suddenly lit up. "This is a little bit of immortal spirit from all of us, so let's entrust it to your map." With that, the more than 100 rays of light flew down like meteors and then lingered on the 9 regions map, faintly forming a firmament shrouding momentum. Taoist Master He too took a look, smiled slightly, and then reached out his hand to press the firmament of the 9 regions map. The river of stars shattered, and the more than 100 rays of light were pressed into the scope of the 9 regions map by this palm. They merged with the map, as if they were one with the world. Good. This move of lifting heavy things as if it was light attracted the applause of the two sides. To suppress more than 100 immortal spirits in the 9 regions map, this alone was no less than the magical ability of a true immortal. The strength of Supreme He too was simply bottomless. Good, the blood oath has been made. Next, Taoist Master He too took a deep look at the 9 regions map that contained both the immortal spirit of Dixian and the primordial spirit of the Wanxian League elders. Merry Christmas. I wish everyone a happy monthly vote and a refreshing recommendation vote. Chapter 638. What the hell is that picture? In the square of B3 area, Shu Si raised his head high, puzzled and irritable. Not long ago, he was still moved by the love story of Jing Shirlu and Aluo. Who would have thought that the story would come to an abrupt end? A man in black jumped out and said that the previous story was a hoax, and the truth was a disgusting tragedy that made people want to vomit last night's dinner. At that time, the whole square was filled with shouts that shook the sky, and the momentum was really impressive. And most of them were cursing and insulting the man in black. It was a very simple truth. If someone suddenly jumped out and tried to overthrow that person's perception without any hard evidence, being scolded was inevitable. Although the man in black came up with a subversive story, there was no hard evidence to support that story. Of course, on the other hand, Wang Lu also had no evidence to prove that the story of those crosstalk actors was true. However, did this world need so much evidence? Everyone was busy in the city of immortals, each pursuing their own ideals. The life of this group of crosstalk actors was a kind of entertainment, just for fun, who cared about whether it was true or false. As for Xu Si, he didn't care at all which of the two stories was true. For him, it didn't matter whether Jing Shirlu was born for love or the shovel crosstalk actor Jing Shirlu was born for love. Which one was more interesting, he was more willing to support. In comparison, of course, Jing Shirlu who was born for love was more interesting. Therefore, Xu Si also hated the man in black for interrupting the story, which caused him to be unable to see the life and death separation of Jing Shirlu and Aluo. However, before everyone could scold the man in black enough, they saw that the picture in the signboard on the square changed. More than 200 people entered the arena from 2 directions, and then the world collapsed and returned to the void. In the void, he too, and the black-robed man exchanged their hands and formed a 9 regions map that combined the heaven and the earth. Xu Si had never heard of the famous 9 regions map, nor could he understand the mysterious means of a peak supreme and an ancient earth immortal. He could only look at them in bewilderment. It was said that the scene just now was a blood oath, but he didn't see anyone shed blood, so how could the oath be made? Or could it be that the great cultivators no longer had red blood flowing in their veins? Humph, you ignorant fool, you don't even recognize the 9 provinces map? Xu Si subconsciously replied, why should I know what the 9 regions map is? Ah. Dead face, why is it you? Halfway through his words, the little mouse recognized that the voice behind him was his current boss, Dead Face. He was so shocked that his soul almost flew out. To be honest, this dead-faced man was not a bad person. He had always been very good to him, but once he made a mistake, his punishment was merciless. This time, he was caught slacking off, so he would at least be scolded. However, unexpectedly, Dead Face didn't seem to notice that Xu Si was being lazy at this time. Instead, he explained with a sinking voice, 9 regions map is the most valuable treasure of Xingjing sect, which reflects the ambition of Xingjing sect to rule the 9 regions. The design idea of the 9 regions map is to treat the 9 regions as a complete magical treasure, and then refine a central magical treasure that can control this magical treasure. Hearing this, Xu Si couldn't believe it. Control the entire 9 regions? Xingjing sect people were really ambitious. Now that Supreme he too has the 9 regions map, could it be that the 9 regions is already in the palm of his hand? Xingjing sect people are ambitious, and they have been so for thousands of years. Dead Face said and then shook his head. However, wanting to refine the entire 9 regions into their own magical treasure is just a fantasy of Xingjing sect people. Supreme he too's cultivation base is unprecedented, and he also has the support of Xingjing sect people's thousands of years of 9 region strategy. However, this 9 regions map is still in its embryonic form. It can barely sense the changes in the situation on the 9 regions, but it is extremely difficult to exert a direct influence on the 9 regions. However, being able to see the world with one map is enough to be called a top-quality immortal treasure. Xu Si asked, then what's the matter with this immortal treasure now? Why did it become a blood oath? It's very simple. Today's 9 regions map is used as a carrier. The elders of the Wanxian League side took out a part of their primordial spirit and entrusted it to the 9 regions map. The same is true for the Dixian side. They extracted a bit of their immortal spirit and entrusted it to the 9 regions map. This is like a common hostage for both sides. The contract based on this is more effective than any oath, so it's called a blood oath. In fact, apart from this blood oath, there is no other means that can restrain so many top cultivators at the same time. Xu Si seemed to understand and asked, I heard that there's a big demon heart oath. The big demon heart oath can be avoided. The Wanxian League side alone has a successful precedent. It's the red and white boy who gave you the compass. When he condensed the king pill, he swallowed the big demon heart oath. And at the level of Dixian, a bit of immortal spirit is enough to break the entanglement of the demon heart, so the big demon heart oath is basically a joke to them. Very well, then what's going to happen next? With the progress of the grand competition, the two sides will divide the primordial spirit and immortal spirit in the 9 regions map according to the points obtained from the victory. When the division is finished, the grand competition can be over. What? Divide the primordial spirit and immortal spirit? I heard that if the primordial spirit or immortal spirit is in the hands of others, they will never be free. Yes, this grand competition is used to determine the dominance of the future, and the dominance of the future is always people. As long as people are controlled, the future is naturally controlled. If all the high-level cultivators of the Wanxian League fall into the hands of the Dixian, how could there be a chance for the Wanxian League to make a voice in the future? And vice versa. Xu Si seemed to understand and said, so that's how it is. But, don't you think it's strange? I heard people say that this grand competition is ultimately for the common fight against the fallen immortal. But now, everyone has put their primordial spirit and immortal spirit on the map. If something happens to this 9 regions map, wouldn't it be the end of the world? Oh, you're right, so we sincerely pray that there will be no problem with the 9 regions map. Once the world is in chaos, people like you and I will be no different from ants. With that, the dead face faintly sighed, which made Xu Si suddenly feel cold and his whole body trembled. Other things about this dead face were fine, but this cold aura was really unbearable. Usually, Xu Si didn't want to stay in his room and often sneaked out, which was more or less related to this. At this time, he only felt the chill in front of him. The dead face slightly raised his head, as if immersed in some old memories, and a wave of gloomy fluctuation came. Xu Si couldn't bear it, so he planned to take the opportunity to slip away and go to other areas. However, as soon as he moved, the change in the signboard above his head made him stop. Because the first battle of the grand competition actually came faster than anyone expected. The blood oath had just been made, and the opening battle had already come. The two sides in the opening battle were He Tu and Xian Mo. Needless to say, after He Tu showed his magical ability to suppress the immortal spirit, his reputation among the cultivators had undoubtedly become the number 1 person in 9 regions. It was best for him to open the prelude to the battle. Whether the 9 regions side could get a good start or not depended on him. However, the other side was somewhat unexpected. After making the blood oath, the man in black quietly escaped and pushed the leader, Xian Mo, to the front of the stage. Although Xian Mo looked a little helpless, he still resolutely took up the heavy responsibility. The battlefield was set in the central fighting arena of Immortal One area. Above the infinitely high sky, the 9 regions map of Supreme He Tu was like a star overlooking the earth, waiting for the winner's blessing. At this time, the fighting arena still maintained the dark void, and the natural scenery such as mountains and rivers had not been restored. Because for this level of battle, the general terrain was difficult to have a substantial effect. Even the spirit vein that was stuffed in it was difficult to compete with the 2 peak level cultivators. It was better to clean up everything and leave an empty field for them to play freely. And the supreme level battle was indeed not disappointing. Yin and Yang divide. Without any greetings, without any extra action, after Xian Mo entered the arena, he directly cast an earth-shattering great immortal technique. Yin and Yang divide. According to legend, in the endless past, the whole world was a piece of chaos and void. There was no distinction between heaven and earth, yin and yang. A sage born in the chaos divided the chaos, so that the clear air rose and the turbid air fell. Only then did the yin and yang of heaven and earth come into being. This was also the reason why the present 9 regions could exist. And Xian Mo wanted to reproduce the magnificent miracle of the ancient sage. With one hand pointing to the sky and the other pointing to the ground, the dark void was abruptly torn apart, divided into two layers of yin and yang. Outside the arena, the cultivators of the Wuxia League who witnessed this scene held their breath. This was the first time they had witnessed a Dixian go all out to display an immortal technique. It was completely different from the King Pill level negation immortal technique that Bai Zhe used against Wang Wu a few months ago. What was displayed by Xian Mo was comparable to the divine skill of the creation of heaven and earth. In the existing theoretical system, this was the most lethal technique that people could imagine. According to the existing theoretical system of immortal cultivation in 9 regions, it was generally believed that yin and yang composed everything in the world. In other words, no matter what thing or person, once it was separated by yin and yang, it would cease to exist and fall apart from its structure. Unless one could be detached from the world, no one could be spared. However, that was already the realm of transcending the tribulation and ascending, which was something that could only be seen but not reached. For the cultivators of the Wuxia League in the current stage, this was already a fatal situation. Senior brother sect leader. Several Xingjing sect elders who were closest to the scene could not help but exclaim. No one could have imagined that the seemingly friendly and gentle, and even somewhat weak Dixian Xian Mo, could have such power when she made her move. And how could Hichu Daoren, who was in the middle of it, be spared? The next moment, with a muffled groan, Hichu Doran's body was cut from the waist and divided into 2 pieces. However, just when countless people were shocked by this scene, Xian Mo let out a soft cry. The body was broken in the middle. This was not the result that the yin and yang division technique should achieve. After being hit by this technique, the whole person's existence should disintegrate, and then turn into yin and yang and be assimilated by the world. If it was only broken in the middle, did it mean that Hichu Doran's upper body was yang and lower body was yin, a natural-born yin and yang person? However, the next moment, Xian Mo had already seen the answer. Worthy to be the number 1 person in 9 regions, I deeply admire you. Right in front of Xian Mo, there was a young man in white and a young girl in black. The 2 of them were separated from the yin and yang worlds and stared at her with a solemn face. What a good yin and yang incarnation. Chapter 639. What the F***CK, who are these 2 people? Is the original body of Supreme He 2 actually a 2-person rotation? Moreover, it's a man and a woman. So, the true gender of Supreme He 2 should actually be yin and yang person? F***CK off. Your mother is the yin and yang person. F***CK, you people from Xingjing sect can do it, but we can't say it? Look at it yourself, isn't that a man and a woman? Inside and outside the city of immortals, people who saw the situation in the arena through various channels fell into great shock. The mystery of Xian Mo's great immortal technique yin and yang division might not be clearly seen by everyone. However, Hichu Doran's upper and lower body were divided into 2 parts, which was obvious to all. It was not uncommon for cultivators to have an incarnation technique, but it was quite rare to see a man and a woman with different genders. After all, each incarnation came from the same source. If a man could have 2 kinds of avatars, didn't it mean that there was a female component in the source? This kind of situation was not unheard of, but when it fell on the head of the number 1 person in 9 regions, it was inevitably shocking. Could it be that under the serious face of Hichu Daoren, there was a woman's delicate heart? However, unlike the dumbfounded audience outside the arena, Xian Mo, as a Dixian, understood the significance of Hichu Doran's yin and yang incarnation. Of course, he too was not a yin and yang combination, or a delicate mind, but he had begun to transcend the human level and set foot in a higher realm. The definition and concept of male, female, and gender were only valid for the individual. In a group, gender was meaningless. For example, in a village of 100 households, half male and half female, was the village male or female? And he too began to break away from the individual category and sublimated himself into a group. Therefore, after the yin and yang division, there would be 2 complete men and women. The male was strong and firm, symbolizing the pure and untainted masculinity, while the female was soft and yin, like a fish in the water in the chaotic world. Is this your path? He too's incarnation that was separated into the yin and yang realms didn't answer, but he didn't need to. At the peak of the unity stage, half a step away from the Mahayana realm, every move and word contained his own unique Tao. As for the Dixian Xian Mo who was half a level higher, he could completely understand this kind of Tao. For a moment, Xian Mo was stunned, but he was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he said softly, "People in the mountains are immortals." Since ancient times, the transcendence of the path of immortals has always been the result of comprehending the Tao of heaven and earth and then ascending to immortality. During this period of time, they would personally distance themselves from human affairs. Therefore, it is often said that immortals do not eat the food of mortals. Yet, you're doing the opposite, using the path of all living beings to prove the great Tao. No wonder you're only at the pinnacle of the body integration stage, half-step Mahayana, with your strength. You've already given up on the ordinary immortal Tao. Although his voice was not loud, it was like a clap of thunder in spring, causing countless people inside and outside the arena to be stunned. Supreme Hichu had already given up on the ordinary immortal Tao. He was the #1 immortal cultivator in 9 regions. If even he had given up on the immortal Tao, didn't that mean that there was a serious defect in the immortal cultivation of modern people? After the age of chaos, for thousands of years, there were countless capable people in 9 regions, but none of them were able to break through the last hurdle and ascend to immortality. Many people's immortal heart was filled with shock. Especially those who had stepped into the body integration stage and had been diligently cultivating for the Mahayana stage and the heavenly tribulation to ascend to immortality, they were even more shocked. Only the several elders of the Lingjian school were slightly startled after hearing this. A certain lazy-looking master of non-phase peak, after hearing this, his eyes flashed, the corner of his mouth hooked up into a smile, and then he nodded slightly. Unexpectedly, the brain of that old bureaucrat is not dead yet. On the other side, in the center of the whirlpool, he too had to open his mouth. This has nothing to do with the immortal Tao. The young man in the Yang realm said, "I am the sect leader of Xingjing sect, the leader of the Wanxian League. Therefore, it is not my way to be good alone." Upon hearing this, Xian Mo was startled again. "You can't be good alone?" A moment later, Xian Mo sighed. "As the leader of hundreds of millions of people, I must shoulder the mission and responsibility for these hundreds of millions of people. So, no matter how good the way to be good alone is, it's not good enough. That's why I chose such a way. So that's how it is. You chose to refine the 9 regions map, this kind of immortal treasure, because of this consideration." The 2 incarnations of He too nodded, and then no longer spoke. Each of them operated their own power, ready to fight with Dixian in this Yin and Yang realm. However, Xian Mo suddenly raised her hand. "I didn't expect that after more than 10,000 years, there would still be people like you in 9 regions. In order to express my respect, I will give this game to you." After saying that, Xian Mo's figure slowly disappeared from the arena. After she left, the Yin and Yang boundary in the arena also disappeared. The clear and turbid qi began to mix again, but it didn't return to chaos. Instead, it gave birth to the sun, moon, stars, mountains, and rivers. In the blink of an eye, the arena returned to the original green mountains. In a short period of time, the arena experienced a small chaos creation, but the overall structure was not chaotic at all, and there was no sign of collapse at all. This also made the spectators deeply sigh with Dixian's means. Xian Mo's Yin and Yang division was already beyond imagination, but now it seemed that the person who built this arena was even more brilliant. However, what was more worth sighing with emotion was Dixian's temperament. What did she just say? She gave this game to us? Did she admit defeat? On the rostrum, the red-robed ancestor was extremely surprised. Just because brother he too is serious and responsible, she admitted defeat? Isn't this too much of a child's play? On the side, Supreme Tianluan chuckled and said, "I'm afraid things are not that simple. There are other inside stories that we can't know. Let's wait and see for the time being." It's not a bad thing to win the first battle. The red-robed ancestor froze for a moment and then turned his eyes to the side. He saw that Dixian's side was also tangled, but they didn't seem to be surprised by this. Obviously, they had expected that Xian Mo might choose to give up and admit defeat. Oh, Brother Tian Luan, unexpectedly, as the leader of a famous bookworm sect, you're actually very sophisticated. Supreme Tian Luan smiled again, and there was a bit of pride in his smile as he said, the so-called human relationship, when deconstructed in detail, is nothing more than calculation and choice. As long as you refer to the various states of the world, make thousands of sets of formulas, and compare all the possible situations one by one, you can do whatever you want. Moreover, according to the needs, you can freely switch between various forms, temperament, and experience. If you want to be sophisticated in human relationships, you can also be full of vigor. This is a set of method that I was able to master 50 years ago. Unfortunately, one must have a supreme-level primordial spirit to be able to master this set of method flawlessly. Otherwise, I would have popularized it a long time ago, so that the world wouldn't laugh at my 10,000 art sect people for not understanding human relationships. Upon hearing this, the red-robed ancestor clicked his tongue. You 10,000 art sect people are really monsters. Supreme Tian Luan said, immortal cultivation has always been like this. Although the main path is unified, until the day of ascension, the immortal path is like a tree. At the beginning, there's not much difference, but the more it grows and extends, the farther the branches and leaves are. When the immortal path reaches its peak, it has long been far from the so-called normal state of the world. The so-called monster is nothing more than a stage that is too high to be understood by the world. The red-robed ancestor chuckled. Your 10,000 arts sect has always been like this since 10,000 years ago, refusing to admit that you're just a bookworm. However, when it comes to you, you're actually able to create a set of human relationship method that has never been done before. It's really rare. Red-robed Daoist friend, if you're interested, we might as well exchange pointers some other day. The two chatted happily and gradually forgot about the outcome of the match. Although the outcome of Hichu Doran's first match was important, it was not enough for the two supremes to worry about it. On the other side, the Dixian Daoran had different expressions. Xian Mo walked from the arena to the rostrum and apologetically said, I'm sorry, I lost the first match. But I really can't do anything to him. At this moment, even the most harsh Baizé didn't speak, but just silently turned his back. The one who had the best friendship with Xian Mo, Dixian Daoran, came over and patted her on the shoulder. We all understand. If it were me, I would also abstain. After all, it's too similar. Baizé coldly snorted. Similar my ass. With that, he turned around and walked away. The victory in the first battle should have been great news for the union of 10,000 immortals. Although the points gained from a victory were negligible compared to the entire competition schedule, as the first match, the symbolic meaning was much more important. In the battle between the Supremes and the Dixian Daoran, Dixian basically had no strength restriction. In other words, the victory of Hichu meant that the gap between the peak strength of the Wanxian League cultivators and the Dixian Daoran might not be as far as people thought. However, those who had witnessed the battle with their own eyes could not feel happy. The gap was not that far? Perhaps. As the number one person in 9 regions, it was not surprising that Supreme Hichu had a powerful trump card. Over the years, those who had been in contact with him had guessed that his strength was far stronger than it looked. But that was Hichu. So what if it was someone else? In the face of the world-splitting yin and yang division, how many people could guarantee that they could withstand it? At least, when Xian Mo used this immortal technique, many of the Supremes who witnessed it from the sidelines changed their complexion. For example, the famous mad dog from Xingjing sect, Supreme Tianyu. At the moment of yin and yang division, he was stunned and his body went stiff. Obviously, he absolutely could not withstand that move. And among the Supremes, Tianyu was famous for his actual combat ability. After doing all kinds of dirty work in Xingjing sect, his actual fighting strength was absolutely not a disgrace to the name of Supreme. Even he was like this, let alone the others. Let alone after dealing with the Dixian Daoran for so long, they more or less knew that Xian Mo's strength was far from the top among the Dixian Daoran. In this match, the other side handed over the victory. If they didn't, what would the result be? Sure enough, trying to win in the high-level fight was as difficult as ascending to the sky. It was the right choice to put the strategic focus on the fight between King Pil and Yuanying stage. However, had the King Pil and Yuanying stage who were still in training made enough progress? Thinking of this, there were many people who were worried. However, at this time, on the rostrum, a lazy voice spread throughout the city of immortals through the equipment in the venue. "Ah, I've witnessed a wonderful fight. My emerald green bamboo sword is simply unbearably hungry. I wonder if you can add a plug so that I can solve this hunger problem first?" With that, a woman in white stood up. In one step, she crossed the boundary between the rostrum and the arena and stood in the middle of the venue. She held a bamboo stick in her hand. This time, it didn't even have the shape of a sword, but a stick. And such a unique weapon naturally couldn't belong to anyone else. Wanxian League, Lingjian School, Master of Non-Phase Peak, Wang Wu. Please enlighten me. Holding the sword, Wang Wu was no longer as lazy as before. Although the weapon in her hand didn't have the shape of a sword, the King Pil was spinning in her eyes, and the sword intent was awe-inspiring. Ah, the first day of the weekend has passed just like this. I'm so happy. Please pay attention to the WeChat public platform search for His Majesty the King. Thank you everyone. They should be very rich, but they still look like they're in poverty. Probably because he enjoys the taste of poverty. As expected, the capable people in the Wanxian League are mostly freaks. While the audience was arguing, Wang Wu was already a little impatient. Because after she entered the arena for a full quarter of an hour, no one from the Dixian side stood up to fight with her. They just looked at the arena with bewildered and uncertain eyes. Wang Wu also stopped her initial posture and stabbed the bamboo stick on the ground. Is there anyone who wants to fight? The dignified Dixian shouldn't be so indecisive, right? If you think you have no chance of winning against me, there's no harm in giving me another round. The discussion among the Dixian people on the rostrum suddenly became louder. Giving him another round? That would be a joke. Xian Mo cupped her hands and gave the first victory to He Tu, which was understandable. After all, He Tu's Tao of all beings had shaken everyone's hearts. However, surrendering with cupped hands was not something that could be repeated. How could a person who could stand up against the immortals in the upper realm more than 10,000 years ago admit defeat so easily? On the contrary, they had to win the second round. They had to make up for the impact of the first round's loss. Previously, they hesitated not because they were worried about Wang Wu's almost invincible strength in the King Pil realm. Instead, they were discussing whether this sudden challenge would disrupt the competition schedule and make many of the arranged matches unable to go smoothly. However, now that they were provoked like this, there was no reason not to respond. Otherwise, the people from the Wanxian League would really think that the Dixian were afraid of them. Therefore, not long after, a figure flashed on the arena. Someone had already accepted Wang Wu's challenge. Hey, why is it still you? Wang Wu was a bit surprised to see Bai Zhe. The defeated opponent in the past had a cold and solemn face, dressed in plain clothes, and was no longer surrounded by the gorgeous immortal treasure negation golden seal. His temperament seemed to be a lot calmer. After meeting, Bai Zhe no longer said anything but coldly said, "The shame of the past will be returned 100-fold today." Wang Wu could not help but laugh. 100-fold? Losing once is not enough. Do you want to lose 100 times? If you are willing to repeat the score, I don't care. The victory points of this grand competition are still very valuable in the mysterious Sky Mansion. Bai Zhe coldly humphed and said, "Empty talk." With that, he no longer talked nonsense. As soon as he raised his hand, the sky was torn and starlight fell from the sky. Hey, you're suspected of cheating, right? As soon as Wang Wu saw this scene, she was shocked. If you, these weak people, can do it, why can't we do it? With that, Biyao stopped, closed his eyes, and pursed his lips. His right hand hung on the side of his body. His palm opened and closed as if he was recalling the feeling of controlling the stars. At the same time, outside the arena, there was a dead silence. What Biyao said just now was like a heavy hammer that fell on people's heart. If you, these weak people, can do it, why can't we do it? Since Wang Wu could create non-phase method, then why couldn't she create a more powerful method with the means of the ancient Earth immortals? Such a simple truth, why didn't we ever think of it? Previously, everyone only sighed at the power of the number 1 king pill in 9 regions and rejoiced at her temporary victory. However, they didn't think that when the Wanxian League was in full swing, how could the Dixian people be idle? And once the Dixian people got serious, how could the current Wanxian League have even half a chance of winning? The more people thought about it, the heavier their hearts became, as if there was a mountain pressing on their chest. Even the faces of the several supremes on the rostrum were unusually ugly. Until another person's voice came from the arena. It was the voice of Wang Wu. Well said, but, you're not Biyao, are you? At the same time, Biyao suddenly opened his eyes, opened his left hand, and clenched it forward, as if to lock someone's throat. Whoosh! The palm broke the air, making a harsh explosion. The 5 fingers closed. Although the movement was small, it could press out an overwhelming wave of air. However, when he clenched his fist, there was not what he wanted in his palm, only a green bamboo stick that suddenly appeared. The stick was crystal clear and had a strong magical power flowing around it. That palm that could destroy gold and stone could not break this bamboo stick. And on the back of his neck, there was a slender and gentle hand. Then, that hand suddenly clenched. It was the same overwhelming wave of air, and the strong grip was exactly the same as that of Biyao. However, this clenching of his hand was also futile. Because the moment the palm clenched, Biyao's figure instantly shrank by 1/3. The man who was originally half a head taller than Wang Wu became a child whose height only reached her chest and abdomen. The child had a smile on his face, his 2 eyes curved into a crescent moon, and in his hand, a curved dagger was stabbed behind him. Puff! The muffled sound of the dagger stabbing into the flesh came. Wang Wu's indestructible non-phase method could not resist the dagger's edge. However, Wang Wu, who was stabbed, turned into the bamboo stick in her hand, and the original bamboo stick turned into the enchanting figure of a woman in white. The woman's finger was like a blade, slightly curved, like a curved dagger, and directly stabbed the forehead of the smiling child. Crash! Like broken glass, the child's body turned into pieces. And 100 feet away, a small tree swayed slightly and turned into a person. It was the smiling child. What a powerful intuition. Did you see that I was fake from the beginning? Continue to follow the WeChat public platform. Search for His Majesty the King. Thank you everyone. Chapter 641. In the fighting arena, the change could be described as rapid as the hare rising and the falcon descending. After Wizard said a string of despairing words, the sudden change dazzled everyone's eyes. Wang Wu, who was supposed to die under the falling stars, miraculously came back from the dead and fought a series of ridiculously fast offensive and defensive battles with her opponent. Not to mention the King Pill level audience, many Daoist masters of Yuanying stage also felt their vision blurred. When they could see clearly, the 2 of them had already had a short truce and were talking to each other hundreds of feet away. Did you see that I was fake from the beginning? Wang Wu stretched out her foot to kick the bamboo stick on the ground and held it in the air while saying, "Of course I couldn't see it. At first, I thought that the idiot Biyao was finally enlightened and was willing to throw away the flashy but impractical negation golden seal and use a more solid method to fight me. But, TSK, what came was a series of illusion." The smile of the opposite child was even more brilliant. "So, you didn't see my real body at the beginning? Then how did you block my illusion when you didn't guard against it in advance?" Wang Wu sighed. "It's very simple, you've played with it." The child was somewhat puzzled. "Played with it?" My illusion should be perfect for you at your current stage. Yes, your illusion is indeed exquisite. Relying on my non-phase method's mind-cleansing effect alone, I can't see the flaws of your illusion intuitively. However, the effect of your illusion is too exaggerated, which makes people instinctively resist believing it. Too exaggerated? Yes, how could there be a king pill level cultivator whose attack power is stronger than my defense? This is simply impossible. Wang Wu shrugged her shoulders with a, "How could you be so stupid," smile. Even though the child's smile was almost instinctive, at this moment, he couldn't smile anymore. Is this your reason? Is it not enough? If one day you see the sun rising from the west, won't you doubt the authenticity of this world? For you, is non-phase method so indestructible? Wang Wu said, "You can try." So that's how it is. I didn't know that your belief was so strong. That's why the illusion failed and you saw through the flaw. The child shook his head. It's the first time I've seen someone like you. Wang Wu said, "Actually, it's not that fast. At first, I thought that Biyao had changed tactics and abandoned the flashy negation immortal technique. It wasn't until I heard your nonsense that I realized that you weren't Biyao himself. If it was any other idiot who saw me being destroyed by the starlight, he would have laughed to the heavens and said that he was invincible. How could he have the intelligence to come up with a lie to hurt people's hearts? Using the opportunity of the competition to attack the Wanxian League's mind, this is not Biyao's style." The smiling child asked, "That's not a psychological attack. I'm just telling the truth. In this grand competition, you guys have no chance of winning. Including your match, I've already grasped the victory in my hands." With that, he stretched out his hands and flapped them slowly like wings. Every slight tremble left an afterimage that would not fade away. After a while, thousands of arms had accumulated. What is he doing? Outside the arena, many people had doubts in their hearts. At present, the opponent was a childlike illusion master. Just now, his illusion almost deceived everyone, even though Supremes did not see the flaw, which was simply incredible. Of course, the most important reason for this was that the flow of the surrounding spiritual energy was isolated from the inside and outside of the arena, which led to the audience could only rely on vision and experience to judge the situation in the arena. And based on vision alone, the illusion of the child was flawless. However, no matter how perfect the illusion was, it was still an illusion. Seeing that Wang Wu's confidence in herself was so strong that she could ignore the illusion. What else could the child play? What kind of prelude was this thousand hands gesture? The next moment, the answer was revealed. More and more arms appeared around the child, the surrounding spiritual energy also shook violently, dark clouds gathered above his head, and lightning flashed. However, at this moment, the tip of a dagger suddenly appeared in front of Wang Wu's chest, and a beautiful blood-stained flower quickly bloomed around it. The supposedly flawless non-phase sword defense was broken before it could even be displayed. However, compared with the sharpness of this dagger, its ghostly appearance was even more amazing. There was no person holding the dagger, and there was no trace of magical power fluctuation, but the dagger just appeared without any reason. Of course, this was also thanks to the boy's thousand hands posture, which successfully attracted everyone's attention. When everyone thought that the thunder cloud in the sky was the killer move, the dagger that could pierce through the non-phase method had silently stabbed the opponent's body. However, this dagger was just the beginning. On the snow-white dress, one could only see the red flower of blood blooming. One by one, the dagger pierced through the body, revealing the surface of the body. In an instant, the curved dagger had turned into thousands of illusions, like a storm. Just when Wang Wu's body was about to be torn apart by the violent stabbing, she saw a burst of distortion. Impressively, it turned into an emerald green bamboo stick. And Wang Wu herself had quietly appeared behind the thousand hands boy and pressed her palm on his head. The same thousand cuts reappeared on the boy's body, and his body, which was much smaller than Wang Wu's, could not withstand such pressure at all. Like a watermelon being smashed by a heavy hammer, the ground was covered with dark red. In the blood, the child slowly condensed into the shape of his original body, but there was a bit of confusion on his face. The next moment, he stretched out his right hand and moved his 5 fingers. Instantly, the earth trembled like the surface of water. Then, all the rocks shattered into sand, and everything within a radius of 50 miles sank into the ground. This spell wasn't launched quickly, but Wang Wu didn't dodge it and was directly buried in the soft sand. A moment later, an emerald green bamboo pierced straight out from the bottom of the infinitely deep sand hole. At the same time, Wang Wu appeared in front of the child like a ghost, and her slender white hands wrapped in yellow sand. Enough. The child roared and flew backward, pulling away from his opponent. You dare to use illusion to counter me? Wang Wu curled her lips. Huh? You actually saw through it so quickly? I was going to play with you for a while. As she spoke, her figure began to become erratic, and there were also thousands of arms on her back, exactly the same as the child. At this moment, countless people inside and outside the field fell into shock again. My goodness! He actually dares to use illusion against Mirage Boy. On the Dixian side of the rostrum, a young girl who looked no more than 20 years old stood up and looked at the field incredulously. As a close friend of the smiling child, she couldn't be more familiar with him. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that his illusion was superb. In the complete Dixian realm, it wasn't an exaggeration to describe his supernatural power. In the peak state, his illusion could forcibly distort the boundary between reality and illusion, and a word could even loosen the great Tao of heaven and earth. Such an amazing illusion, half of it came from the inheritance of the ancient immortal world, and the other half came from the special bloodline in his body. Although Mirage Boy looked like a pink child, his essence was mostly a non-human creature, close to an immortal beast. In theory, even if he were to lower his cultivation, no one in the same realm would be able to resist the erosion of this natural illusionary master. Mirage Boy was the trump card of the Dixian side. They had previously carefully analyzed the fight between Bai Zhe and Wang Wu and determined that it was difficult to win the head-on fight against that barbarian woman. Therefore, they sent Mirage Boy. Who would have thought that? Wang Wu actually went against the heaven's will and could use illusion against Mirage Boy. Fellow Daoist Feng Yin, isn't your Lingjian school hiding too deep? Not to mention that kid Wang Lu, this master of non-phase peak really hides her ability. Previously, she was able to obtain the title of the number 1 king pill in 9 regions because of her inconceivable non-phase method. Unexpectedly, after all these years, her non-phase method has become more and more refined, and she also cultivates illusion. When it came to this, the red-robed old man sighed with regret. Such talent is really rare in the world. Unfortunately, her natural spirit root is not good, and she has no chance to break through to Yuanying stage. Otherwise, if she could have the stage of the other elders of your heavenly sword hall, at this time, I'm afraid it would not be your turn to be the sect leader. Upon hearing this, Feng Yin just shook his head and smiled bitterly. After a moment, he said, how could she know any illusion technique? This is nothing more than the nameless non-phase sword. Nameless sword? Is that the sword technique that can return the damage? The red-robed old man asked. She can even bounce back illusion technique? Feng Yin explained, although it's an illusion technique, it's essentially nothing more than a change in energy. With her swordsmanship, it's not difficult for her to bounce back. These words sounded simple, but when it fell into the ears of the experts, they were even more amazed. It's essentially nothing more than a change in energy? Yes, that's right. But even great immortal techniques like Yin and Yang division and immortal T, weren't they essentially energy changes? If any energy changes could be bounced back, then Wang Wu would really be invincible in the world. It seems that we've won this battle again. On the side of Dixian, the Mirage Boy's best friend sneered. You're thinking too much. The illusion technique of 1,000 illusions is not that simple. Illusion technique is an attack on the mind. He's still far from showing his true ability. Just as he said this, the Mirage Boy in the arena finally decided not to hold back anymore. The 1,000 arms behind him retreated, and the boy's smiling face melted like snow, turning into a flat surface like water ripples. In the surging ripples, new facial features were regenerated. And his slender body suddenly elongated, becoming strong and straight. Then, the clothes on his body also changed, turning into a red and white Taoist robe. Finally, a bright smile appeared on his face. At that moment, the Heavenly Sword Hall elders who were watching the battle from Lingjian's school all stood up at the same time. Their eyes were wide open and filled with anger. He actually dared to turn into this appearance. At the same time, Wang Wu was also shocked. Eldest senior brother, it's you? Ouyang Shang, who was on the opposite side, smiled lightly. Long time no see. His posture and tone were exactly the same as the eldest senior brother of Lingjian's school who had passed away a long time ago. The real illusion technique was to see through the weaknesses of people's hearts and bury the seeds of evil in the cracks. Chapter 642. Good Punch. Under Wang Wu's punch, Mirage Boy's King Pill body and protective sword energy couldn't resist at all. In an instant, the bridge of his nose shattered into pieces, and his head became dizzy. Even the martial monks who were best at Vajravidyaraja in the Zen sect couldn't have such a hard fist. Mirage Boy suspected that if he was hit a few more times, the whole illusion would collapse because of this. However, this was necessary pain. The illusion that disintegrated the mind rarely worked in one hit, and the vicious seeds needed a long time to germinate. During this period, it was common for the opponent to instinctively question and even kill him. Mirage Boy once incarnated into a mother's long-dead son in front of her. At first, the mother didn't move, but after seeing that it was an illusion, she directly chose to attack. However, under the painstaking efforts of the illusionary child, the other party was finally unable to resist the erosion of the illusionary technique and revealed a fatal flaw. And that time, the illusionary child used a whole month's time, during which he experienced countless tortures of hovering between life and death. However, Mirage Boy never expected that the battle with Wang Wu would be so difficult. Under the restriction of the Great Vow of the Heart Demons, she shouldn't have the ability to take the initiative to attack, but he didn't expect that she would throw such a powerful punch. Sure enough, for this pair of master and disciple, the Great Vow of the Heart Demons was useless. After the punch, Wang Wu's face was full of joy. While wiping her fist with a handkerchief, she said, don't misunderstand, I've always followed my oath seriously. I won't take the initiative to hurt people with immortal spells, unless I'm hurt by the opponent and I return the favor. Mirage Boy was angry and amused at the same time. I didn't do anything just now. I just said hello to you, and you rewarded me with a face-breaking punch. Wang Wu saw through his thoughts and sneered, do you think you're innocent? Do you know how seriously your illusion hurt my pure girl's heart? Mirage Boy had to use a lot of patience to hold back from cursing out loud. Do you think you're worthy of a girl's heart? I've been cultivating for almost 1,000 years, but I've never seen a pure girl who eats, drinks, and gambles. If it weren't for the fact that maintaining illusions had become second nature to him for thousands of years, Wang Wu's words would have almost destroyed the Mirage Boy's illusions. However, Dixian had the state of mind of a Dixian after all. The Mirage Boy quickly extinguished the anger in his heart and once again immersed his mind into the illusion. He gathered up his immortal heart that had been shaken back and forth, and gradually let himself enter the world of Ouyang Shang. Regardless of whether they were pure or not, a woman's heart would always be infatuated. This person, Wang Wu, was probably the same. He wasn't afraid that she wouldn't take the bait. Junior sister, we haven't seen each other for over 100 years, but you've given me such a big surprise the moment we meet. In the arena, the young man in the red and white robe casually wiped off the bloodstains on his face and then smiled. But I'm still very happy to see you. Damn it, this guy actually. Outside the arena, the second elder of the Lingjian school's Heavenly Sword Hall, Lu Xian, couldn't help but curse. The tone was exactly the same as it was 150 years ago, the same posture and expression, even the slightest flaw couldn't be found. Even though they knew that this was an illusion, people still couldn't help but think of that person, the person who meant a lot to everyone. Even though they were outside the arena, the elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall couldn't help but let their thoughts wander, so the people inside the arena were shocked and shaken. Everyone knew that the person Wang Wu liked the most was her eldest senior brother. Even if her temperament changed greatly after the disaster, the matter about her eldest senior brother was always a taboo that should never be touched. It wasn't until Wang Lu came to the mountain in recent years that her attitude slightly loosened. But at this moment, Mirage Boy resurrected the dead with an illusion, so no one could guarantee whether Wang Wu could keep calm. Lu Xian turned his head and questioned Dixian, to imitate to such an extent, "Have you been planning for a long time?" The friend of Mirage Boy shook his head and said, "Planning? No one will plan for a mere king pill. He doesn't know who the man in the red and white robe is at all. This is just one of the effects of the immortal technique." What the hell is this immortal technique? Mirage Boy really didn't know Ouyang Shang. Although he had collected some information about Wang Wu before the competition because she had defeated Bai Zhe, his understanding of Ouyang Shang was only that there was such a person in Wang Wu's life. He didn't know anything else. However, Mirage Boy's illusion was like a mirror, which would faithfully reflect the key points in the opponent's heart. It was none other than the indelible memory in Wang Wu's heart that made this flawless illusion. And the effect of the immortal technique was not limited to this. Because anyone's memory would be beautified and modified, Mirage Boy also needed to guide the cause and effect, further perfecting the foundation of the opponent's memory with the supreme mysterious power, and finally perfectly simulating all the characteristics of the opponent. In a sense, during the maintenance of the illusion, Ouyang Shang, who should have been dead for more than 100 years, was really resurrected. "Junior sister, I understand how difficult it is for you to accept this unexpected reunion. But to be honest, it's not easy to meet again, but I was subjected to domestic violence by you. It really hurts my heart," Ouyang Shang said as he approached Wang Wu. Unsurprisingly, Wang Wu met him with a heavy punch again. Then, Ouyang Shang used a perfect earth escape technique to blend into the ground, and dodged behind Wang Wu. He grabbed her with both arms, wanting to hug her. But the golden sword energy immediately supported him and bounced him away. "Oh, I haven't seen you for more than 100 years. Junior sister, you've actually cultivated such a brilliant sword technique? As expected of inheriting my legacy, it makes me feel that I didn't die in vain." Wang Wu sighed and said, "You really know how to provoke others in a provocative way. Using this face to say such words to me." Ouyang Shang thought for a while and said, "Junior sister, you're right. It's rare for us to meet again, but I'm saying such high-sounding nonsense. No wonder you're unhappy. Okay, I'll be straightforward. It's rare for us to meet again, so let's make love. You're courting death." Wang Wu frowned. The emerald bamboo sword in her hand flashed, and the cold light of mysterious frost bloomed from her palm. A silver-haired and silver-eyed sword spirit showed a translucent body from the light and agile sword body. She held the sword with both hands and swung it from top to bottom. The cold air that could freeze everything and the sharp sword energy wrapped each other like a surging tide. The mysterious frost sword was a middle-grade spiritual treasure. At this time, it was accompanied by Wang Wu. With her full strength, the power of this sword was several times stronger than the one Wang Lu used to force the mysterious frost sword spirit to self-destruct with the golden seal of the sect. However, when the frosty sword chi swept past, it was blocked by a towering mountain. Ouyang Shang raised his hand and turned the earth upside down. The thick earth element spiritual energy condensed into an indestructible shield, isolating all damage. "Oh, don't be angry. In fact, if you think about my proposal carefully, you should be able to realize that this is an excellent idea. You and I only had time to exchange our true feelings that day, but we didn't have time to exchange bodily fluids. Life is missing a very important link, isn't it? Now, although I'm only resurrected because of the illusion, at least at this moment, I really exist." "Ridiculous," Wang Wu said coldly. She withdrew the mysterious frost sword, and then the emerald bamboo sword flew out of her hand and stabbed into the mountain where Ouyang Shang was. The tip of the sword sank into the rock and soil. The next moment, thousands of emerald bamboo swords burst out from the mountain. Wood restrains earth, and the indestructible mountain was also defeated by the vitality of the emerald bamboo. Ouyang Shang didn't care. He used the earth escape technique to escape a few miles away. Only Feng Yin, who knew more inside information, almost couldn't help but laugh out loud when he heard this. Fifth junior sister, you are indeed cunning. You actually put your own calculations on the surface. As long as she doesn't comply, the opponent can't stop the illusion for even a moment, and this illusory reunion will continue until she can no longer hold on. The question is, how long can she last? Feng Yin used the star diffraction technique to roughly calculate, and the result was as expected. It really is infinite. There is only one day left in 2014. Please vote for the Golden Keyboard Award. I hope that the readers with votes can vote for me. Thank you everyone. Chapter 643. Senior brother, let's make this jade flute together at noon. I've only read about it in a book before. I thought the author made it up out of thin air, but I have a friend who is a chef who said that it can actually be made. I think there's no harm in giving it a try. Oh my God, it's rare for a person who never washes dishes to be interested in doing housework. But I appreciate your kindness, so please put down the kitchen knife. Hey, put down the kitchen knife. Do you want me to tear it with my hands? That's not impossible, after all, my slender hands are quite exquisite. No, 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 junior sister, please move away from the kitchen and leave the rest to me. Wang Wu was astonished. Why? Senior brother, when did you learn cooking? Ouyang Shang shrugged. To be honest, I've never learned it seriously. Then why did you take my job? To survive. Ouyang Shang seriously said, although I don't have any good cooking skills, at least I have the ability to cook non-toxic and harmless rice. Upon hearing this, Wang Wu sneered. Oh. Does that mean my cooking is poisonous and harmful? Yesterday, I basically didn't eat the 24 moonlit bridges of love that you made. I just put it in the jade box as evidence. You might as well taste it yourself to see if it's non-toxic and harmless. By the way, the chef that you often mention, who gave you all kinds of inspirations, is she from the 10,000 Poison School? TSK, she is from the royal family of the Western continent. Since childhood, she has been living a luxurious life. Now, she has been the chef of a super sect in the Wanxian League for many years, yet you dare to doubt her cooking? Ouyang Shang said, otherwise, should I doubt my own tongue and IQ? Moreover, if her recipe is really reliable, why don't you eat that 24 moonlit bridges? Wang Wu said, because I want to give all my love to you. Please at least give yourself a little bit of self-respect. Humph, to put it bluntly, you still don't love me enough. I'm sorry, because I love you, I can't bear to let you be a widow, so I won't eat that suicidal thing. Outside the arena, countless spectators were dumbstruck as they watched the battle gradually develop in a direction that no one had expected. In the battle between Mirage Boy and Wang Wu, it was a fast-paced exchange of attacks at first, with many twists and turns. However, as Mirage Boy used the real illusion to attack the mind, the rhythm of the battle changed rapidly. It was so peaceful that it was annoying. After the initial short battle, the two people on the stage seemed to have completely forgotten about their opposing positions. They began to chat about daily life, reminisce about the past, and sigh with emotion. Then they joined hands and built 2 wooden houses by the side of a brook, and lived there as neighbors. The pace of their lives was very stable. Because both of them were at the king pill level, they could be self-sufficient without external help, so there was no need for them to farm or raise livestock. Ouyang Shang was adept at using the 5 elements, so he was able to create all kinds of tools for daily use. When the two were in the mood, they would pick up their flying swords and go hunting in the forest. The environment in the arena was highly simulated, and there were all kinds of rare birds and beasts in the forest, which could be used to cook delicious dishes. Today, the two were arguing about improving the taste of dishes. Although there was conflict between their words, there was more of a warm affection that made people feel sick. Wang Wu, Ouyang Shang, the deep bond between the two could be seen by a blind person. That kind of deep affection was more than many vigorous vows of eternal love. However, the deeper the affection between the two, the more puzzled the audience was. What was Mirage Boy waiting for? Right now, Wang Wu was undoubtedly immersed in the illusion, completely trapped in the dream of eldest senior brother Ouyang Shang's resurrection. Then why didn't Mirage Boy take the opportunity to win this battle? Why did he continue to maintain the illusion and let the adulterous couple love each other day after day? Many of his teammates, who were Earth Immortals, couldn't figure it out. What is Qian Huan doing? It's been a month. If it doesn't work, just give up. It's a waste of time to hang around like this. Because Wang Wu's battle was not in the plan at all, in order to avoid affecting the whole situation, the two sides initially agreed to wait until the end of the battle before the grand competition would fully open. At that time, there would be dozens or hundreds of battles at the same time to save time. However, no one expected that this battle would drag on for a whole month, and there seemed to be no sign of it ending. What the hell? Is Qian Huan helping the opponent to delay time? Don't be impatient. Qian Huan has his own reason for not making a move. As a close friend of the illusionary child, the girl-like Earth Immortal Qin Yin stood up and said in a crisp voice, "Can't you see that in the past month, Wang Wu has never let down her vigilance? She seems to be trapped in the illusion, but have any of you ever seen the Black Frost sword leave her waist? She and that man seem to have a life and death relationship, but have you ever seen them intimate even once in the past month? They didn't even hold hands." When everyone heard this, they were stunned. When they recalled it, they found that it was true. In the past month, the two seemed to be intimate, but they always maintained a subtle distance. If Qian Huan put down his illusion at this time and launched a surprise attack, it would be very difficult to achieve the result. However, there's only one line left. Wang Wu's heart defense will soon collapse. Qin Yin's eyes were awe-inspiring. No matter how much resistance she has in her heart, her feelings for that person are too deep. At the same time, after finishing a simple meal, Wang Wu, who was watching Ouyang Shang using the 5 elements spell to wash the tableware, suddenly said, "Senior brother, do you still remember what Uncle Master Ling Bao said when I first entered the sect and met him?" Ouyang Shang said, "Of course I remember. Damn it, the traditional elder must be blind. How could he accept this kind of rotten melon as his disciple? Let alone ascend, this kind of waste that has no hope of reaching Yuanying stage in his lifetime to do odd jobs for everyone?" Humph, because of that sentence, I hated him for 20 years. Uncle Ling Bao has always been like this, his mouth has never been guarded. When he appraised his son's spirit root, he also blindly said that this kind of middle-grade spirit root idiot simply tarnished his noble bloodline, and that most likely his wife had an affair. Ah, I remember, and then he was beaten until he couldn't take care of himself for many years, right? Yes, his wife Fairy Ling Yun is from the Royal Soldier sect, more than 50 years older than him, and her cultivation base is also a level higher than him, so domestic violence is common. But Uncle Ling Bao's nature is not bad, there's no need to hate him. Of course not, that year's disaster. For a period of time, I was separated from the main group and encountered a powerful evil spirit whose cultivation base was comparable to peak deity stage. When I was about to die in the hands of the evil spirit, it was Uncle Ling Bao who rushed out and perished together with him, so I survived. So it was him. I always thought he didn't like me, but that day he stood out and then died. From beginning to end, he didn't say a word to me, didn't even look at me. But I still realized that I hated a person I shouldn't have hated for so many years. And then? Later, after that disaster was over, I wanted to go to the Royal Soldier sect to find Senior Ling Yun, but the people of the Royal Soldier sect told me that when Uncle Ling Bao died, Senior Ling Yun died for love. She and Uncle Ling Bao fought and quarreled all her life, and she often complained that Uncle Ling Bao's cultivation base was not advanced enough. Moreover, for more than a year, she lived with her child in her parents' home, but no one in the world loved Uncle Ling Bao more than her. Yes, otherwise, how could the daughter of a dignified high-rank aristocratic family, a genius with a promising future in the Royal Soldier sect, condescend to marry a boy who was still unknown at that time? Alas, the disaster of the fallen immortal is really distressing. Wang Wu said, "Yes, but we have all survived and did not disappoint your expectations, senior brother." I know you won't. It's just that, I still deeply regret that I couldn't accompany you through that difficult journey. Seeing that the tactic was ineffective, Mirage Boy began to take the initiative to remove the illusion. Wang Wu chuckled. Actually, your guess at the beginning was a little close. It's a handsome and talented young man. Ouyang Shang asked curiously, what's the difference? The only difference is, it's not about the same as you, but more handsome than you. Damn. Your lie is a little fake. The only one who can be more handsome than me is me 100 years later. Wang Wu heard this and was slightly startled. You're a little crazy. But. As she spoke, she took 2 steps forward, walked in front of Ouyang Shang, and her cherry lips gently touched the latter's cheek. However, in my heart, no one can replace you. Ouyang Shang sighed. I really feel that it would be better to replace you. No need, I will feel that I have the 2 best men in the world, and I will have twice the happiness. Wang Wu gently closed her eyes, no longer looking at the last scene of Ouyang Shang completely disappearing. Big brother, thank you. Happy New Year to everyone. TCH, a bunch of useless fellows. In Area B3, a youth with slender limbs carried a basket of oranges and looked disdainfully at the group of cultivators gathered under the signboard in the center. Over the past month, he was used to seeing these cultivators who were good at empty talk sighing. At first, he thought it was interesting, but now, he simply felt that they were a group of waste. Yes, in this city of immortals, there was food and drink, and life was worry-free. Before the competition started, there was not much to do, but this was not a reason for idleness. Nowadays, there were a lot of busy people in the city, and not everyone gathered under the signboard every day, waiting for the picture to be restored. Most of the people who came to the city of immortals, whether they were cultivators or mortals, knew that this opportunity was rare, and they would do their best to fight for it. For example, a certain youth who carried the oranges was one of them. Dead face, the golden oranges that you wanted have finally arrived. As Xu Si spoke, he unceremoniously kicked the door of a shop in the corner of Area B3. After a loud bang, the entire door was kicked away. But before it could fall to the ground, the wooden door floated in midair and stopped. Then, a middle-aged Taoist with a livid face came out of the house. Okay, have you checked the quality? He reached out and pushed the wooden door back to the distance, and then took the basket of oranges from the youth's hand. Nonsense, how could I have made any mistakes when I was doing things? Of course, it has been checked. They are all high-quality goods. This basket of oranges is worth 200 spirit stones. Speaking of which, dead face, what do you want so many oranges for? Your face is already ugly enough. If you eat too many oranges, be careful not to get orange disease. Dead face snorted and the corner of his mouth trembled slightly. He seemed to want to laugh, but his smile was creepy. This basket of oranges is for you. What? Xu Si had just rushed into the inner room to pour himself tea. When he heard this, the hot water almost poured on his hand. For me? What do I want oranges for? Of course, to eat. You have to finish this basket today and tomorrow. What the hell, dead face, are you kidding me? You have just drunk the 8 Desolation 6 Directions soup, which has opened up the human body's apertures and formed the spirit root. You have officially embarked on the road of cultivation. But your talent and aptitude are too poor, so I'm afraid 50 to 60% of the potency of the soup will evaporate. If you don't want to lose too much of the potency, which would leave you with a mixed spirit root, then obediently eat all the golden oranges produced by the Green Tree School. Xu Si's mouth twitched. It doesn't matter if I have a mixed spirit root. Anyway, I'm not a mortal anymore. Before he could finish his sentence, he saw a golden tangerine with branches and leaves that hadn't even been peeled off hit his head. It was stuffed directly into his mouth, shaking his gums so much that he felt pain. Since you have become my disciple, I will never allow you to become a waste. Although this 8 Desolation 6 Directions soup is not a superior product, with your physique, it is barely the most suitable one. After taking it, if you take it and adjust it well, you can stabilize the level of your spirit root to the middle grade realm. In the future, you will have the possibility of achieving the king pill. Shu Si was taken aback. I can achieve the king pill? Dead face, you think too highly of me. Unfortunately, his mouth had already been stuffed with oranges. The bitterness of the orange peel and the sweetness of the pulp mixed together, making him unable to say a word. And when you reach the king pill realm, you can really be regarded as the sea and the sky. Humph, don't underestimate the king pill. A king pill contains infinite possibilities. If not, I would be too lazy to pay attention to a naughty little mouse like you. Shu Si swallowed the orange with great difficulty and gasped for breath. Dead face, there's a limit to your pretentiousness, okay? You still dare to look down on the king pill? Who is looking down on the king pill? I have never expected to reach Shudan stage in my life. Being able to reach Qi cultivating stage is already a rare immortal opportunity, okay? But your cultivation base is only at foundation establishment stage, yet you actually dare to talk about the king pill realm with confidence and composure. Isn't your face too thick? This dead face is also because of its amazing thickness that the blood circulation can't reach it, right? Shu Si spat out the orange comfortably, but the next orange quickly flew over and completely blocked his mouth. Are you satisfied with Qi cultivating stage? Don't forget who gave you the immortal opportunity when you came to this city of immortals. If you stop at Qi cultivating stage in this life, it would be a disgrace to him. Shu Si inwardly scolded, people are so busy every day that they don't even remember me. Moreover, what does it have to do with you whether Wang Lu is disgraced or not? Is he your godfather or not? Having a godson like you is really a stain on Wang Lu's name. However, the little mouse was very clear about the fact that the situation was stronger than the person. No matter how unbearable Dead Face was, he was at least a foundation establishment stage cultivator. And when he just got his spirit root, he only became a little stronger, and he hadn't even started cultivating yet. In order to avoid being choked to death by the orange, he had to eat this loss first. By the way, Dead Face, what do you think is going on over there? Shu Si very cleverly chose to change the topic. He pointed to the sky outside the house and said, the screen has been stuck for a month, and in this month, the high-level people on both sides have never appeared again. It's really inexplicable. Don't tell me there's something wrong with the arena? Dead Face coldly humphed and said, if there's really a problem, how could the entire city of immortals be so peaceful? It's just that there are people in the arena who don't want outsiders to see the details. Most likely, they have some trump card that can't be exposed at will. As for a month, what is it for a fight between experts? I have seen a king pill level fight that lasted for half a year. Shu Si inwardly scolded, do you think you deserve to see a king pill level fight? If there's a Daoist master of king pill, the aftermath would blow you away. However, his words were, then who do you think will win, Daoist master non-phase or that Dixian boy? Humph, that's a stupid question. With that, Dead Face turned around and went back to the house. How could that person lose? At the same time, while many people outside the arena were talking about the situation in the arena, the people in the audience also had different opinions. Because they couldn't see the situation in the arena. Compared with those who watched the broadcast outside the arena, they had only watched a month's worth of heartwarming romance drama. And when the drama ended and the climax came, the picture was also fixed. Hey, why doesn't the person inside move? At first, people thought that this was a sign that the two sides were about to reveal their true intentions, but soon they realized that this was a smokescreen used by the person inside and didn't want to expose what would happen next. It seems that we won. The friend of Mirage Boy smiled leisurely and said, I suggest you admit defeat for the person inside as soon as possible. He too glanced at her and didn't speak, but the red-robed patriarch unceremoniously scolded, bullshit. The person inside is motionless, how do you know that you've won? The girl said, isn't it easy to understand? Why is the picture stagnant? Because your supreme non-phase finally couldn't resist the erosion of illusion and began to open her heart to her true love, so she began to do what she loved to do. If such a scene was exposed to the eyes of the public, I'm afraid it would have a very bad impact on her, right? Although Qian Huan often wins with illusion and is accused of being despicable, he is essentially a very decent person and won't embarrass his opponent too much. Think about it, if Wang Wu has the upper hand, with her temper, she should show off the situation where she has the upper hand, showing off her strength. The girl's words were reasonable, making people completely unable to refute. Several Supremes in the Wanxian League suddenly looked at the arena worriedly. It was a pity that this arena was built with long-lost immortal technology, which completely isolated the perception of the outside world, so that they couldn't detect the situation in the arena. I say, he too, why don't we admit defeat first? It's better than letting that child Wang Wu really suffer any humiliation. He too was silent, but his eyes narrowed slightly. Obviously, he also had an idea in his mind. At this moment, an unexpected voice came in. There's no need for that, just wait for the result. Hearing this, the red-robed patriarch was stunned, then turned his head in surprise. Wang Lu, you brat, you're finally awake. Heh, I slept for a whole month. If I didn't wake up, would I be waiting for a princess on a white horse to kiss me? As Wang Lu spoke, he jumped to the front row of the rostrum, leaned forward, and looked at the stagnant scene in the arena with interest. Especially his gaze stayed on the young man in the red and white robe for a long time. The effect of this illusion is not bad, it's almost like the real thing, restoring every detail of this idiot. TSK, this zombie resurrection script is quite powerful. As soon as he finished speaking, he heard the sect elder Lu Xian say angrily, Wang Lu, don't be presumptuous, do you know who that person is? Hearing this, Wang Lu was stunned, then smiled and said, I know, Wang Wu's old lover. He is. Lu Xian was about to reprimand Wang Lu for being so casual, but he was stopped by his senior brother. Although he did not understand why his senior brother stopped him, he still held back and did not say anything. The Dixian girl looked at Wang Lu for a while and said, Hey, are you sure you don't need to admit defeat? Your master may have been pushed down by now. Although everything is an illusion, it may cause irreparable damage to the person himself. Wang Lu grinned. Don't worry, the irreparable damage has already been done more than 150 years ago. The girl was about to say something, but she saw a black shadow flash beside her. On the Dixian side, the real person in charge walked over. Enough, we admit defeat this round. Well, I think there might be some misunderstanding between us master and disciple. PFFF. Ahaha, master, you're so funny. Why are you so nervous like a newlywed wife? Of course, I slept like a log for the past month or so. At that time, I was about to die. How could I have the spare energy to separate my primordial spirit to look outside? It's just a lie. Ha ha ha, little Lu, you're getting more and more mischievous. You flatter me. How can I be as naughty as a two-timer? F***CK, how much do you know? Master, you're anxious again. I'm just lying to you. Of course I didn't see anything. You little bastard, don't tell me that you recorded the whole thing and just watched the video? Master, how do you know me so well? Don't tell me we knew each other in our previous life? The master and disciple duo chatted cheerfully with a smile that made the hair of others stand on end, and the surrounding temperature continued to drop. Just when the surrounding people felt that they could not stand it anymore, the illusionary child also walked out from the arena. His face was solemn, and the smile on his face was gone. Dixian's side hurriedly interrupted the fight between the master and disciple of non-phase. Thousand illusions, how are you? Phew, it's an eye-opener. As the illusionary child said this, he patted his cheeks and tried to make the smile return to his face. I'm convinced of this battle. Plus, it's beneficial to my illusions. Even if I lost, it's worth it. Before he could finish his words, one of his companions smiled bitterly. Worth it? We've lost 2 games in a row. It's really unexpected that even you can't do anything to that woman. Upon hearing this, Mirage Boy's face turned serious. According to the rules of this grand competition, no one is her opponent. In the future, whenever she appears in the competition, we can just abstain directly. What? Mirage Boy's words made his companions feel inconceivable. Wait a minute. Thousand Illusions naturally saw the confusion of his companions, so he stretched out his hand and an illusion that distorted the cause and effect covered the space. In the eyes of the Wanxian League, they saw that the group of Dixians were still talking with a dignified face, which showed a deep fear of Wang Wu. Although she is King Pill, her real strength is no less than that of peak deity stage. What's more, her mind is invulnerable. If we want to defeat her in the same stage, unless we take out all our cards, we might have a chance of winning, but it's not high. Instead, we would expose our cards in vain. I remember that in most of the matches, the King Pill level matches are the first, followed by Yuanying and deity stage. If she cheats out her cards in the King Pill level matches, it would be too disadvantageous for the later matches. After all, 9 regions is so big, who can guarantee that there is only one person like her? This remark was reasonable. Plus, Mirage Boy's illusion in Dixian stage was flawless, so the Wanxian League did not doubt him and did not pay too much attention to him. However, in fact, what Mirage Boy wanted to say was another thing. In short, I suspect that her King Pill is an outside path. Outside path? Yes, at least not the immortal path that we cultivate. At least, I don't believe that the King Pill in the general sense can be so strong. She just looks like the King Pill. When Mirage Boy finished speaking, the people around him were shocked. Even the man in black stopped and turned around to listen quietly. Is this possible? Xian Mo could not help but ask. This is after the age of chaos, the surrounding spiritual energy is scarce, and the great Tao is also blinded. Even the road to immortality is difficult and bumpy. How could an outside path cultivator reach this point? One person speculated, perhaps it is because the right way is blocked that some people take the unorthodox path. The so-called immortal path is just a narrow path cut out by the powerful people in the age of desolation hundreds of thousands of years ago. After countless generations of later generations, it gradually became the Great Tao. However, it doesn't mean that other paths can't be taken. I have seen with my own eyes that the power of the outside path is not inferior to you and me. It's really surprising that there are still outside path cultivators after the age of chaos. However, at this point, one person suddenly realized something and angrily said, if she really is an outside path cultivator, why would she still pretend to be the King Pill? The previous matches are simply cheating. Mirage Boy shook his head and said, there's no evidence. I've been fighting with her for more than a month, but I can't see through her at all. No matter from which point of view, she's just an ordinary peak King Pill. The operation of her true yuan and the fluctuation of her primordial spirit are far from the ordinary outside path. Therefore, even if we accuse her of cheating, it would be meaningless. Instead, it would make people think that we can't afford to lose. However, this kind of outside path cultivator is almost invincible under the current rules. Even if we go all out, it would only expose our trump card. I suspect that her strength is not yet at its bottom. If we give up all the matches related to her, how many points will we lose? Xian Mo counted with his fingers and said, at most, 510 points, which is irrelevant to the overall situation. Mirage Boy said, well, I also think that's the result. Therefore, we can afford to lose, and there's no need to cause a greater loss for these 500 points. In addition, let the people behind us be more serious when they make their move. These guys are not as bad as we think. Not to mention the number one person in 9 regions, he too. I don't think any of the sect leaders of those super sects are easy to deal with. Moreover, what I care more about is their ability to learn and grow. I was delayed by Wang Wu for more than a month, plus the opening ceremony was forcibly delayed for 3 months. It's a bit long. The man in black said, after the main competition begins, there will be no paper competition. Everyone, do your best, strive to break their morale in the shortest time, and end this farce as soon as possible. If necessary, I will also take action. Black, you also. Upon hearing this, several Dixian people were pleasantly surprised. Only when it's necessary. The man in black said coldly, I'm a sinner, not worthy of your dependence. Don't forget what I've done. On the other side of the rostrum, the people of Wanxian League were not idle. Wang Wu, in your opinion, that Mirage boy, before he too's voice fell, Wang Wu waved her hand indifferently and said, there's nothing great about him. In Dixian, he's probably above average, similar to Xian Mo. Upon hearing Wang Wu's words, the people around them were slightly relieved. The true illusion technique of Mirage Boy was really frightening. It was already so powerful in the King Pill realm, so who could resist it in a higher realm? However, since Wang Wu said so, perhaps there were some unknown weaknesses in the actual fight. As long as they could grasp it, they would have a chance to win. You seem to have misunderstood. What I mean is, if we meet him in other competitions in the future, except for me, everyone else can directly forfeit. There's no need to waste any more time. Puff. Wang Wu said seriously, in addition, I suggest that after the main competition begins, we should temporarily send out some weaker players. Why? Because I guess that Dixian intends to end the fight quickly and use the fastest speed to achieve a comprehensive victory in the early stage to destroy our morale and make the situation of the grand competition irreversible. During this period, they will send out all their experts. With our current strength, we can't win. He too asked, if we can't do the fighting, what about the literary fight? It's the same. The other side has Luo Shui Fairy who is proficient in all kinds of arts and is close to the Tao. It's difficult for us to win in the 4 arts, chess, calligraphy, and painting. In addition, several sub-events in the fighting are similar, there are insurmountable difficulties. The red-robed patriarch asked, how do you know it so well? Of course, they told me. Wang Wu smiled and said, although Mirage Boy is not a core member of Dixian, his illusion technique is superb and he has a lot of information in his hands. Illusionary child, why did he tell you this information? Wang Wu said, of course, it's because he's in an illusion. The real illusion trapped me for a month, but at the same time, how could he not be trapped by the illusion that I bounced back at him? Speaking to this, a happy smile appeared on Wang Wu's face. This fight is really fruitful. Just when he too and the others were stunned and guessed what Wang Wu had gained. They heard Wang Lu say gloomily, yes, it's a fruitful harvest. Damn it, did you see that? Chapter 646. It's really painful to be a prophet. In an exquisite courtyard in Immortal 5 area of the City of Immortals, Wang Wu lay on her back on a rockery, put down her wine gourd, and looked up at the blue sky, at the 2 figures fighting fiercely among the white clouds. The third match between the union of 10,000 immortals and the Earth Immortals in the Yuanying stage group, Poison Match, and one-on-one match was in progress. This was also the most watched battle in the past month since the end of the battle between Wang Wu and Mirage Boy and the full launch of the grand competition. The value of the victory alone was more than 50 points, which was better than the sum of 4 or 5 of those literary events. Moreover, the Wanxian League side was still a veteran Yuanying stage expert. Before the game, the public opinion was greatly exaggerated, as if the Wanxian League was determined to win this battle. Unfortunately, I'm almost blinded by his death omen star flash, a poor member of my great union of 10,000 immortals. With a sad face, Wang Wu gulped down half a gourd of wine. Before the incident, I predicted that that guy would die in this trip, but as a result, his supporters still blushed with me. No wonder it's said that being half a step ahead of the world is a genius, and 1 step ahead of the world is a madman. Stop talking nonsense, you can only be 1 step ahead of the world with your lower limit. People with discerning eyes know that he's going to die. The public opinion propaganda before the game is purely a few literati sensationalism. After all, fantasy is just fantasy. If singing a high tone can make me invincible, I don't have to go to the Western continent to work hard. Don't look at the people dancing happily on the stage now. In terms of singing a high tone, they are not as good as me. Under the rockery, Wang Lu held a stack of documents and continued to say with a sneer. I've already reminded them that at the beginning of the competition, Dixian will try its best to suppress the morale. The so-called pretending to be pretentious when the wind is favorable and pretending to be dead when the wind is adverse. In the early stage, we need to avoid the sharp edge. Even the experts of the 5 uniques are pretending to be dead. However, some small sects jumped out to make noise. All of them have their eyes on the top of their heads and their hearts are higher than the sky. They can't be dissuaded. Now, this senior Scarlet Blood Poison on the stage, who knows where he jumped out from, but he's being portrayed as some famous expert. Fuck you. Wang Wu said softly. Senior Scarlet Blood Poison was quite famous 70 years ago. He came from a high-rank sect, but because of his vicious nature and repeated taboo violations, he was expelled from the sect. However, he had a fortuitous encounter, and his strength was even stronger than his fellow disciples. I don't care if he was famous back then. Isn't he still being F***ked on stage now? TSK, isn't the scarlet blood poison said to spread blood poison for 1,000 li? Why was it trapped in someone's body and unable to spit it out? The taste of the scarlet blood poison's backlash should be pretty good. I think he's rolling his eyes in pleasure. Yo, he exploded and died. What a dazzling firework. Wang Wu lay on her back and laughed. Huh, why do I feel like you're full of resentment? Did he offend you? Wang Lu said, it's not that I offended him. At that time, I kindly came forward to persuade him not to be fooled by a fool and stand out at this time. As a result, he immediately turned hostile, saying that he was a child and so on. Hee, in the city of immortals, there are not many people who dare to be so rude to me. Wang Wu said with interest, there's actually such a thing. Then how did you deal with it? Humph, Senior Scarlet Blood Poison has been living in seclusion for decades. After this grand competition was widely publicized in 9 regions, he came out to participate in the competition as one of the candidates. To say that he has a lack of IQ is certainly true, but behind him, there must be a lot of villains who want to eat human blood. In this battle, people with discerning eyes can see that the withered soul immortal on Dixian's side is extremely powerful and ruthless. If there's no certainty of victory, it's best to just give up. If you insist on fighting, it's basically a dead end. How could Senior Scarlet Blood Poison have the courage to come out? Moreover, even I can't dissuade him. Wang Wu said with a smile, naturally, someone bullied that old thing for being in seclusion for too long. They accused you and me, and even the entire Wanxian League of only looking after their own interests and suppressing the people. Then they bragged about his strength and made him forget himself, thinking that he could become famous in one fight. Little did they know that they don't want him to become famous, they want him to die on the spot. Wang Lu nodded. That's what happened. His death is too much of a contrast with the previous propaganda, which could easily cause the crowd to be agitated. At that time, as long as the crowd's emotions are guided, they can burn the fire on us, the organizers. For example, the preparation is not good, the quality of the medicine provided is not good, or they simply accuse us of being half-hearted and colluding with Dixian, causing these capable people to die in the competition with resentment. You seem to be very familiar with this. It's just a trick of making use of a pretext. I've seen it many times. I've also seen Wanxian League, please slow down and wait for your people, your conscience. Before. Compared to that, this is just child's play. Wang Lu said lightly. Moreover, we've received many similar complaints in the past 2 days. How did you deal with it? I've directly transferred the complaints to Little Hai to deal with. I don't know if he has contacted the waste paper disposal agency. Wang Lu curled his lips, showing the style of a bureaucrat. What are you going to do about those people who are fanning the flames? Publicly refute the rumors? Wang Lu said, "That's a bad plan. Why waste your breath to deal with a group of flies and dogs? Just crush them directly. Find someone to arrest them all, and then casually collect the evidence of their crimes and publish it. Anyway, they won't have a chance to talk back. Whatever we say, the public can only believe it. Well done. Remember to leave a copy for me when you confiscate the house. But I'm afraid it's not just small fries who are fanning the flames. There are also big fishes hidden among them. I know. The top management of the Wuxia League is not monolithic. There are many high-rank sects who want to take this opportunity to rise. That's why when I was provoked by Senior Red Blood Poison, I didn't knock out his front teeth on the spot. For these leaders of big sects, it's difficult to use the strategy of crushing them openly. When I communicated with Supreme He too, I tried to sound him out a few times, but he remained silent. It's clear that he doesn't agree with it." Wang Wu sat up and pondered. That old guy He too is afraid that as the biggest vested interest of the Wuxia League, his words and actions are of great importance, so it's inconvenient for him to express his opinion easily. Yes, he has his considerations, so I won't force him on this matter. During this time, he has given me enough support. If I can't do something, wouldn't I be letting him down? Since I can't crush him openly, then I'll just crush him stealthily. At the same time, in a large hall in Immortal 7 area, a scholarly cultivator bowed his head in front of a desk and wrote at a great speed. Mourning for Senior Red Blood Poison. Senior Poison is gifted. He has been trained by a high-rank sect since he was a child. He is skilled in spell casting and has a solid foundation. Although he is eccentric and frivolous, his foundation was abolished by his sect, and he has no hope of reaching deity stage in his life. However, after a fortuitous encounter and an ancient inheritance, his poison technique is earth-shattering. Even a Taoist master of deity stage would find it difficult to win against him. However, today, in the battle with Dixian, he was utterly defeated. He could not even display 10% of the power of his poison attack, which is unavoidably surprising. Witnessing the death of Senior Poison, people have to ask, why? Why did Senior Poison, who was supposed to win, die miserably on the field after a careful preparation for the Wuxia League? Why in recent months, in the fighting arena, there have been countless deaths and injuries of loose cultivators and evil cultivators, but it's rare to hear the death of a disciple of a famous sect. Why is it that after the death of Senior Poison and the situation of the grand competition, the high-level officials of the Wuxia League are still unrepentant and unrepentant? An impassioned article was written by him in an instant. The scholar laughed and said, "Mo Xiang, send this article to them. I want to see it everywhere in the City of Immortals tomorrow morning." The maid named Mo Xiang beside him chuckled and took the article that had just started to dry. Her beautiful eyes wandered as she praised, "Master's article is getting better and better. As soon as this article comes out, I'm afraid everyone in the Wuxia League would want to beat them up." Upon hearing this, the scholar laughed and said, "This has nothing to do with my article. It's purely their own fault. Since the preparation of this grand competition, everything has been done by them. Moreover, their attitude is arrogant and selfish. I can see that several of their super sects have gotten this and that kind of benefit, but how much of it does my heavenly book building get? Those elixirs are fine, but since they said that they should unite as one, why did my heavenly book building apply for knowledge sharing from the 10,000 Arts sect, but they made all sorts of excuses? My article today is just a voice for the millions and millions of people who have suffered from it. Alright, time is of the essence. Mo Xiang, quickly send the article, no delay." The woman chuckled and nodded, then turned around and left. It was just that, when she turned around, her smile was a bit stiff. Master said it with awe-inspiring righteousness, but, as a person around him, how could she not know the truth? That article was indeed wonderful. The wonderful thing was that it was evasive at the key points, throwing ideas into people's minds and inciting people's hearts. For example, it said that his foundation was destroyed by his sect and he had no hope of reaching deity stage in his life. It sounded like the Senior Poison had a promising future and should be expected to reach deity stage. In fact, with his spirit root qualification, peak Yuanying stage was his upper limit. Secondly, it said that he had a fortuitous encounter with an ancient inheritance. That was true. Unfortunately, it was the inheritance of a small sect from 20,000 years ago, and the quality was not necessarily better than that of today's people. It was difficult to say that a deity stage could win. Low-level deity stage was indeed so. Almost invincible in the same stage, peak Yuanying stage was naturally almost invincible in Yuanying stage. As for the last paragraph, it was even more heart-wrenching. Why did they die on the spot after the preparation of the Wanxian League? Why did people from the righteous sects die so rarely? Because they had long warned the loose cultivators not to throw away their lives, and it was you who instigated them to appear. However, all of this was for the benefit of the heavenly book building. If this morning article was sent out, the high-pressure posture of the Wanxian League would inevitably loosen, and in order to quell public anger, they would have to make an explanation. At that time, the long-prepared heavenly book building would have a great opportunity. However, when the enemy was right in front of them, they still had to fight endlessly. Was this really good? With such doubts, Mo Xiang walked out of the hall. However, just as she arrived at the door, she saw a person standing outside. A blonde girl with blue eyes and bright beauty. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.